Wolfpack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with another 4 p.m. Monday Eastern Time best ball stream where we also dive into a topic of choice. We've been doing our position by position strategies. What is the optimal thing to do at running back, wide receiver, tight end is going to be the focus of today. So we are going to hop right into that. Apparently, my webcam is giving some issues right off the bat here. Always love to see that. So I'm just going to switch to the FaceTime one. But Mo, as always, joining me. You ready to dive into some tight ends today, sir?
Yeah, it's been a hot topic in the best ball and just general fantasy space in the last week or so. A lot of people arguing about what elite tight end is and what sort of advantages it can provide in drafts. So yeah, let's jump into it right away.
Awesome. And so the first thing I just want to cover, and most of you out there probably recognize the pain of the tight end position. It just so often sucks. There's no really way to sugarcoat it or get around it. The tight end position is often your worst scorer in your lineup and just consistently a real pain to figure out what can I consistently get here. It's, again, the lowest collective position always, every single year, when you add up the total fantasy points from the top to the bottom starters. And then it's also the least consistent and reliable week to week among almost every single tight end. It's very, very hard to predict when you're going to get a solid week, a spike week, or a nothing week. More often than not, it's a nothing week unless you get a touchdown. It is just brutal. It's also a really physical and demanding position at the NFL level, which makes it one of the most injury-prone positions besides running back. They occur more frequently there at the tight end position, the most busts at tight end as well. It's often been considered, and I'll pull in some slides here just to kind of illustrate some of these points here, but our man Scott Barrett has talked about how in fantasy there is really just all these different types of each position. You kind of see this example here where he starts at quarterback. There's the Konami quarterbacks. There's the statue quarterbacks. There's 5 types of running backs: bell cow running backs, workhorse running backs, scat bats, handcuffs, and then some other ones. But then, as he kind of hints at here at tight end, there's really only 2 types: the oligarchs and the peasants, the guys that just dominate beyond all belief, the pure royalty. For years, it's been Travis Kelce, a little bit of Mark Andrews in there, and that's about it. We also used to have like the Rob Gronkowski, the Jimmy Grahams. Those guys are long gone, but it typically has been just you have 1, maybe 2 elite guys, and then just nothing behind them. That's really what the position has been, given all of those faults we just talked about, why the position sucks so much. But this was a strange year this last year in 2023. The position really evolved here and became a much deeper, should I say. We always talk about, is tight end finally going to be deep this year? But ultimately, we had this infusion of rookies and sophomores, all of them pretty much late rounders last year, that really took over. We had Laporta, McBride, Ferguson. They were all late round tight ends. This graph you can see right here shows the highest advance rate into the playoffs. If you had Sam Laporta, you got into the playoffs 28.1% of the time. Jake Ferguson, 27.3%. Then we had our man George Kittle, the only real guy in the top 4 there that you can see that actually advanced in those early rounds at higher than a 20% clip. You also had Dalton Schultz, another late round tight end, and then TJ Hawkinson right there in those kind of middle round 5 to 6 range alongside George Kittle. You can see here, late tight end typically smashed last year. Trey McBride, Taysom Hill rounding out those top 8 as Evan Ingram and Cole Kmet finish out our top 10 in advance rate. So it was a strange year where elite tight end really blew. I mean, Travis Kelce, not even close to the top rate. In fact, he had a negative advance rate last year because you were spending a round 1 pick to get him, a top 4 pick in most drafts, and he just was not that much better than the field. And when you look at, Hayden Winks has a great article about, what has worked historically at tight end. And he says the data continually, this is a position where it's very volatile because it's either did Kelce smash? Well, when he smashes, elite tight end's a great strategy. Did Kelce suck? Well, then elite tight end was a horrible strategy. And it's kind of flip-flopped years. So it sounds like we're due for another elite Kelce tight end season. But we shall see. But either way, even beyond Kelce, Mark Andrews going round 2. Well, he got hurt. He was up or down. TJ Hawkinson, yeah, he was among the highest advanced tight ends, but then when you look into the who made it to the playoffs, the finals, who got through, well, Hawkinson was hurt, so he often was not on those rosters that made it to that big dance, that week 17. And then Kittle, again, yes, he helped you get there, but he was quite boom or bust. So it was that kind of evolution where we had so much young talent coming into this position, and ultimately kind of taking over. Sam Laporta was that kind of tight end one here. And so, yeah, the tight end position did kind of gain depth. The other guys to kind of shout out there, Njoku, Ingram, finally kind of hitting these ceilings we've long talked about for the position. For those guys, these athletic freaks finally getting the volume. But was Njoku wasn't a product of Joe Flacco. Ingram getting just peppered, and now some guys gone there, so maybe he can carry over. But ultimately, it was definitely a changing dynamic between the oligarchs and the peasants. Before we kind of talk about how that has shifted the 2024 market, was there any other points, Mo, you wanted to add in terms of like what 2023 did to the tight end position?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, and a lot of what I have to say is kind of more how the 2024 market is shaking out. But the fantasy football space in general is very reactionary. And last year, with the failure of elite tight end in 2023, I think it's really shaping up the market for prime pickings. And if we want to move on to the graphic with the 2024 market, where it's the pickings are pretty prime for elite tight end this year, just because first off, you've got the top tier of tight ends going several picks to multiple rounds later. Now you had Kelsey was a fixture of the first round, Andrews regularly going in the second this last year, and here and there you'll still see guys go in the second round, those Laportas and Kelseys. And on DraftKings, the wild west, I saw Kelsey go at the 108 last week. So you still see Kelsey in the first round here and there, just depending on what kind of ridiculous people you're drafting with. But for the most part, you're not really seeing most of these guys come off the board until round 3 or so, usually one or two in round 2. But the market in general is just really depressed. And then as a whole, this is the deepest, and not necessarily overall, but it's very, very top heavy in the sense that there are 7 or 8 guys that are going in drafts that have legitimate cases to finish as elite tight ends. And I know I referenced earlier the debate of what elite tight end truly is. And a lot of people define that as a guy who's just simply being drafted in the first 5 rounds. But there's a bunch of guys who are going off the board this year in round 7 and 8 who certainly have the potential to finish as a top tier tight end and just provide massive spike weeks. And that's kind of what we're looking for in best ball. And here in this figure, you can see that the mid-round tight ends are more expensive, but that's because we've got ridiculous talent in the mid-rounds available. Kyle Pitts goes in the 6th round, and you can say what you want about Kyle Pitts, but it is certainly by far the best offensive situation and offensive just coaching philosophy that he will ever have in his career. You've got George Kittle, who is available in the 6th round as well, and he's the king of spike weeks. He might not provide super great consistency, but the upside that he provides in the 6th round, it's really unparalleled. He has more potential for spike weeks that are at the similar potential for spike weeks as just about any tight end in the game. And then in the 7th round, you've got Evan Ingram, who just set the single season record for receptions in an NFL season by a tight end. So the depth that this market is providing this year, it's not like anything we've ever seen before. So I think there's some really, really strong advantages that this market is presenting, and we're looking to take advantage of them. And we're going to kind of get into that. But I really think just with the depth that we're seeing at the top half of the position, there's a lot of inefficiencies in the market, and we can take advantage of this by hammering elite tight ends this year.
Yeah, and that's going to kind of transition very smoothly into our next point with this market, that the best of the tight ends are going later than they ever have, yet these other more middle range tight ends are going more expensive than they ever have. How do we navigate this? And also, what happens with punting tight ends, a strategy that has historically been the best way to advance in best ball, according to Hayden Winks' data across those 4 best ball manias. But what does make elite tight end so important in any real season? Why would you go for this if the punt tight end rate is being so much more successful historically at advancing? Well, it's because we're not playing to advance. We're playing to win the whole thing here. And the only real access to those humongous spike weeks at the tight end position, you really have to go elite tight end. You mentioned George Kittle, and he had as many 20-point games as the elites. In fact, he had the most of all tight ends last year. Of course, he has those 3-4 point days that make him an absolute pain to roster in regular formats, in managed leagues where you have to decide who I play and whatnot. But if you can get Kittle with another solid, later round tight end, you can definitely really balance those things out. But there is a nice cutoff point. But there is a graphic here I just wanted to share, because again, we're talking about, again, why would you ever go top elite tight end when the position is so volatile, when the best rate is so high, when it is the worst position in fantasy? The opportunity cost is pretty real. Even though they are cheaper than ever before, you're still giving up some quality wide receiver firepower in that round 4 to 5 range, some great running backs. We talked about it in our running back show. Top 12 running backs are still available in round 4 on Underdog right now. So you're really passing up a plus maybe Lamar Jackson or some of these elite QBs, Patrick Mahomes. If you're going to go elite tight end, there is opportunity cost. So again, why do it? It is that spike week. And so Madison Parkhill, a great tweet here that I also kind of plucked from a great thread from Peter Overzet. Definitely check that out. He has a whole video on just the elite tight end strategy in general that he'll go in more depth than what we're talking about today. I highly recommend you guys check that out. But in general, he references some of these points, and the odds that your elite tight end has 20 plus points is nearly 15%. When you now go to 25 plus, that's 3%. Now, when you go round 6 or later, the odds of a tight end having 20 plus goes down all the way to 2.5%. That is a dramatic drop off in the percents of you getting a spike week. Clearly, it's not even a huge guarantee that you're going to have that elite tight end spike week at any given point. Again, 15%, not the best of odds, but compared to less than 3%, it is massive. And just that true game breaking 25 pluser, not even a full percent. 0.5% here, as you can see by this graphic. So to really give you that chance to push over the titles, again, not going for advance rate, because yeah, sure, 3 tight ends late has been the best way to advance in these playoffs, and that is important, getting as many live teams as you can. There's no doubt about it. But if you're trying to win that whole thing, you got to look at guys like Mark Andrews, 23, 32, and 22.5 points in weeks 14 to 16 in 2021. 66% of teams had Mark Andrews. You were pretty much drawing dead if you did not have Mark Andrews, because that was such a rare source of points from such a bad position. When we talk about all those bad things about tight end, if you get a guy that does rise above those things, as Travis Kelce has for so much of his career, as Mark Andrews did in this elite season that we're now referencing, it makes all the world of difference. 2022, it was George Kittle. He had 23 in week 15, 27 in week 16. He was one of the most owned players in those championships. And then you even look last year, Sam Laporta, 26 points in week 15, then had a week 16 dud, but because of that humongous game in week 15, he was the 3rd highest owned player in those finals, not tight end, entire players there. So there is this just, you kind of need to have that tight end spike week. Yes, we got one from Sam Laporta, a late round tight end last year. This was also known as one of the most historic elite tight end rookie classes coming in. So it's going to be tough. There's a couple late tight ends we do like, and we're going to talk about those players, but it is very, very rare to find. Again, we look at those percents there. 15% or so chance they're going to get a spike week from your elite guys, and 2.5% chance that if you get your tight end from after round 6, that you're going to get a 20 plus point day, one of those days that can truly push you over the edge, whether it's advancing to the finals or actually taking down the whole tournament. And that's really the whole logic. There's not otherwise. Again, there's the opportunity cost. It's a tough position. These guys get hurt. Last year, if you went Andrews or Kelce, you're probably sitting there thinking, what are you guys talking about? Elite tight end? Why would I ever do that? And if you don't get the right guy, if your guy gets hurt, it does suck. It puts you in a big hole, given what you passed up at that point. But if only, let's say, one of these guys ends up staying healthy through the year, it is just a massive, massive edge. Is there anything else in addition to that spike week upside that I'm overlooking here with elite tight end, or is that kind of the same reason you see, Mo, as why you would want to go tight end so early in rounds 4 or 5?
Yeah, I think the comment that you really hammered home that is really significant here, and we'll kind of go and look at the flip side here in a second. But yes, late round tight end has been successful in advancing teams, but we are looking to win these tournaments. We're wanting to get to week 17. We're not trying to, especially in BBM with the lack of regular season prizes this season, it just simply advancing teams could pay off. And you were a prime example of that. You made your fair share with a really high advance rate. But that's not the case this year. We're not looking to just advance teams. We want to get teams into the final. And when we're into the playoffs, we know that we have to have those spike weeks. And those spike weeks just simply aren't as accessible if we're not taking an elite tight end. And then the other comment that I wanted to kind of make here is this Madison Parkhill tweet. how we have to reframe our mindset for 2024, because he references, like many people, his cutoff for elite tight end is someone who's drafted inside of the first 5 rounds. But we know that, like I mentioned before, the ADPs, there are guys who have historically provided massive spike weeks available in round 6 now. George Kittle and Evan Ingram are, if you look at the list, there's a great thread from Hayden Winks. I know we've talked about him pretty regularly on this show, but he's got a great thread about just the tight ends who have simply just straight up provided spike weeks. And you'll see George Kittle littered throughout that list, and Evan Ingram's name pops up a couple of times. So we just have to reframe our thinking and understand the fact that there's such a greater depth at tight end this year that we can expand where we're thinking we're able to, where spike weeks are accessible. There's tight ends who allow us to access spike weeks who are available in the 6th and 7th rounds of drafts. So just getting one of these guys is just so crucial. And now that there's, I would argue, 8 of them that are available, I just think it's massive, because we know that the benefit that those spike weeks provide in the playoffs.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a good point that there's maybe 8 of them. And I think we're going to take a little bit of a detour in what we ultimately decide is our favorite strategy. But we will just talk quickly about why punting tight end can make sense. One, we already talked about why it's just historically routinely smashed. It's the position with all of those faults that we talked about, all of the warts in terms of injuries, inconsistencies, bust rate, injury. There's so many downfalls to a tight end that when you spend the lowest amount of capital on it and you hit 2 of those 3 guys, or maybe all 3 of them, just kind of dink and dunk and get them, their pop-up weeks here like a whack-a-mole, then you ultimately end up being solid because you didn't spend that early round capital. You're not in a hole there where now you probably have more wide receiver firepower, when we talked about last week how crucial that wide receiver firepower is. Or maybe you got yourself a solid running back that's falling you, like a Pacheco in round 4, something of that nature. You didn't spend that early capital, and you find 3 guys that can be serviceable and do that little carousel. Well, yeah, it typically works out. This tweet here from Graham Barfield's a great one that you found, one of my favorite follows in the game, one of my favorite interviews we typically have every season on this show. Over the last 3 years, 20 of the top 26 tight ends by regular season advance rate were drafted at 135 overall or later. That's 77%. So again, the math says late tight end is definitely the way to go. It makes sense given all the warts that you want to go late at the position, the lowest amount of capital sunk into the worst spot. But it is, as we talked about, that 23% that is not there is also the 23% that's the most likely to carry you. 66% of the finals had Mark Andrews that year. Those type of guys are the outliers, and those outliers are typically what gets you there. So ultimately, yes, punting it does typically make sense. The other thing, though, too, is I don't know how you feel. I think this year, especially, the late tight ends really do suck. Like, we're going to get into who could be some punt targets, given that all these 20 of 26 have been 135 or later. We'll look at the guys that we think could fall in that bucket here. But I just, compared to last year, where we had this historic rookie class and Sam Laporta being so crucial there. We've had Taysom Hill as a tight end option year in and year out. Just a couple seasons ago, Evan Ingram was going in those final couple rounds, despite being in the new Doug Peterson system. He was a guy that we were hammering late here at RSJ, and that really worked out well for us. This year, I just really don't love the vast majority of these late tight ends. We'll talk about a couple names we do like, but some of the ones I did like early on in the big board, Juwan Johnson, Tucker Kraft, they're hurt now. They had foot surgeries and pec surgeries, respectively. So already a pretty thin and shallow tight end pool in those late rounds got even worse. So I am just not really a big fan here of the late tight end pool. So as much as it says historically, we wanted to point out that this has been the best strategy according to all the data, all the numbers. This is the way you should go to get through, to advance into the playoffs. But I still, especially with the depressed cost of the elite tight ends, I personally am siding elite tight end, although there is one little pocket of guys we're going to talk about that might be actually my personal favorite to go after. But yeah, these are all great stats in terms of that you picked out here, Mo. Why it is great to punt tight end at times, but I don't know. How do you feel about this late tight end crop? Do you feel like it's one that we can punt on regularly?
Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here. So first, yeah, it was successful in 2023, but we have to understand that just because it was successful in 2023 doesn't mean that it's a strategy that should be applicable throughout the future. There's very many strategies and like just ways to construct your roster and different pockets of the draft to attack players that are successful but in individual years. But really, like there's few strategies that are predictive year over year and that can be applied. The one that really comes to mind is just being focusing on allocating draft capital wide receiver. But the success of late round tight end, it can't, the success last year can't be directly applied to drafts this year. I mean, the big screaming example is the fact that we simply had a phenomenal rookie class, and you kind of got to that. We had Laporta, we had Kincaid, we had Mayer, we had Musgrave, and these guys were just like clearly better than the talent that we're dealing with this year. And I know everyone and their mother loves Ben Sinnott, but he is simply just not on the same caliber, or he's not the same caliber as a Laporta or as a Kincaid. It's just, we're not dealing with the same kind of guy here. And the second, so I'm not as big of a fan of the late round options last year or this year as I was last year. But then that gets me to my second point that I kind of alluded to earlier. Here we see that this tweet from Graham that the selecting late round tight end is incredibly successful in advancing teams. But well, what are we here to do? We're not here to advance teams. We're here to win. And sure, if you get a bunch of your teams into the playoffs, like great, good for you. Like you drafted fine, but I don't care about my advance rate. I don't know about you. I care about how much money I'm making from these tournaments. I'm sitting down and drafting these teams so I can go win a tournament. And we know 100%. Yes, a season, a 14-week stretch where you have some tight ends that are producing and benefit from the chaos of the position and they allow you to advance. Great. But we know that the elite tight ends are the only guys who give you access to these massive spike weeks. And what do you need to win a 456 person, I believe the final is in BBM, 456 person pool? You need a spike week from multiple players. And tight end, yes, it's the one position where you can kind of get by without having a massive spike week. I think Fareed Shaheed, the guy who won BBM 4, he had Juwan Johnson in his lineup who had a serviceable week, but it wasn't massive. But we know you need spike weeks across the board in order to win the final as well as advance through the playoffs. And who's giving you access to those spike weeks? It's the elite tight ends. It's not the guys who are going later. So if you want to grab a bunch of these late round guys and brag about your advance rate, oh, I advanced 25% of my teams, I advanced 30% of my teams, good for you. I don't really care. You're not going to be making money because we know that the spike weeks are accessible through elite tight end. So great if you want to advance a bunch of your teams by hammering 3 guys in rounds 13 through 18. But I know that the only way I'm going to get spike weeks, advance through the initial playoff rounds and make the finals is by drafting elite tight end.
I think you brought up an interesting point that the winner last year didn't have an elite tight end. I did hear this on one of Eric's podcasts. He was talking, I believe it was with Mike Leone, another one of those best ball wizards. And they did bring up the point that if you think of it DFS-wise, there were a good handful of weeks where just the high-paying tight ends, the ones that you had to pay up for, didn't really do anything. So the advantage in those weeks was paying $2,500, getting 11 points from your bottom barrel price tight ends, getting a touchdown from a Noah Fant, something of that nature, although he didn't score any touchdowns last year, so I guess it wasn't him. But you know the general point there is you get that bottom barrel tight end, and the fact that nobody outscored them to such a rate of like 20-plus points, that made going cheap at tight end the win. And that ended up happening in the finals last year where there really wasn't a tight end that exploded. So there are these cases where, yes, going late tight end, that's kind of another reason why punting does make sense, as you see it from that angle where the advantage in those DFS weeks is not paying up at the position and using that resources to go to your other positions like you would in a best ball draft. Instead of a round 4 or 5 pick, you now have paid that $7,000 towards a nice solid running back or your 4th wide receiver. So there are moments it does make sense. I do have plenty of 3 touch tight end late round builds with that in mind, but more often than not, historically throughout best ball manias, it has required that elite tight end to get all the way through and certainly to win it. So I just wanted to kind of point both sides, both pictures before we both seem to agree that elite tight end is what we really want to do. That being said, we'll pull in now the ADP. I do think that like zig where people are zagging, what's the edge this year? I think there's going to be a pocket of tight ends. We'll talk about that. Everyone's saying, here's your 7 tight ends. These are the elites. This is where you can get your spike week upside. You need to have one of these 7 guys or you just punt the position. I think that's not actually true this year. And maybe it's another one of those classic tight ends actually deep this year and it turns out to be another crap fest and we're wrong. but I really do think there's more depth this year than usual. And then people are going to start drafting on that idea that there's never depth at tight end. It's either the oligarchs or the punts. And I actually think the way to live here, we're talking about what is the optimal tight end strategy this year. In my estimation, I actually think it's going to be in those kind of tight end 7 to 10s. And I'm playing it on all angles, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of an edge here because that's not where people are seeing those spike week upside. I wrote an article on rotostreetjournal.com just last week of why I think Jake Ferguson can be a top 5 tight end. So when we get to him, we'll cover why he's absolutely one of my guys, but I'm just kind of giving the lead away here. I actually think the best spot to draft tight ends right now is in that kind of we'll also do some 2v2s though to compare it, because then I also do that. I'm like, yeah, I don't know so much, but we'll talk through all that. Why don't we just start with thinking about, like, if we're going to go elite tight end, which is probably the strategy I am doing the most, despite hinting at the fact that there's another kind of pocket I do like tight ends a lot in. Who would you say kind of qualifies those elite tight ends from number 1 to number what?
So this is like kind of a really strange question, because when we're looking back and like reviewing data to discuss the success and the performance of elite tight end, it's typically, like I've said a couple times, it's typically defined as the as those tight end who was drafted in the first 5 rounds. But I really do think that, as much as this might come back to bite me in the ass, I really do think we're dealing with a different market here this year, different quality and depth of options at the position. So I think we have to, I think while it might technically not be elite tight end in terms of the draft capital that you're investing, I think that there are 7 to 8 elite players who have the potential to be an elite tight end. I think the cutoff is really Evan Ingram. And I just because we've seen not only his ability to provide consistency in terms of his earning targets and just overall volume on offense, but like I referenced earlier, his name pops up on that list of top spike weeks over the last couple of years. Like Evan Ingram, it has produced big weeks, and last season, if I'm not mistaken, like a lot of the spike weeks from tight ends, especially just throughout the season, the tight end that ends up in your lineup is more likely than not just going to be the guy who found the end zone that week. And last season, Evan Ingram didn't find the end zone until I believe week 11. So we didn't really see the maximum potential for Evan Ingram just because he wasn't finding the end zone early on in the year, but he was still providing consistency. But I think you can still put him in that elite tight end group, not necessarily by draft capital, but just by what sort of potential he has to do and his ability to provide spike weeks. Because we saw it last year, and like you mentioned, Calvin Ridley no longer in the picture. They replace him with a splashy, talented guy in Brian Thomas. But I mean, obviously he's going to maintain a similar role, and there's room to grow in terms of his usage within this offense. So I think going down to Evan Ingram is what I would classify as the guys who have potential for elite production, although the draft capital that you have to invest is not what we have typically referred to as elite. But that's what makes it even better for me. You can get access to these massive spike weeks that you traditionally cannot. Even in rounds that are not typically elite tight ends. Like I've said multiple times, it's round 5 that has traditionally been elite tight end, and that's how we're reviewing the data. Going back to that Madison Parkhill tweet, you have a 15% chance of a 20+ point week for a guy drafted in round 5, but we're getting guys who have been previously lumped into that and provided spike weeks. We're now getting them in round 6 and 7. So it's just a really, really interesting market, and I just absolutely love grabbing one of these top 8 guys just because you get that sort of consistency and access to spike weeks with multiple guys this year.
Now, just to play a little devil's advocate on at least the Evan Ingram part and why that's not necessarily the cutoff for me when I define truly elite, weekly access to potentially 20+ points. Over the last 2 seasons, he's only topped 20 points twice. He did have a 27-point day last year. He had a 33-point day in 2022. But other than that, he was hovering right around, he had 50% top 12 games. So as you alluded to, even without tight end or touchdowns, rather, he is having some solid production, 10, 13, 7.8. He's like kind of like a floor for this guy, which is solid. And that's useful for sure. But only 2 of his last 34 games have been above 20 points. when you look at DraftKings wise, full PPR, it does get a lot better. He actually had a bunch of games ahead of 20 points. So he goes just as cheap on DraftKings and then offers that full spike week. But when we're thinking again, underdog, where we're drafting a lot of these, half PPR wise, his ceiling isn't quite as high as guys like George Kittle, who might not have such a floor, but to me, he's kind of the cutoff point. And a lot of people do lump Kyle Pitts in there. I totally get the argument where this athletic freak, 1,000 yards as a rookie, came in with like the most elite prospect profile we've ever seen and really just kind of hit the ground running despite horrid quarterback play. Now finally gets a quarterback that makes monsters at the position. So I get all that. It makes sense to me, but ultimately, I'm kind of in the wait till I see it type of mode with him. So I'm not really lumping even in Kyle Pitts, and a lot of you guys out there may, and that's totally fine. I get the reasoning, I get the logic, but I'd always go to George Kittle ahead of him. He has, compared to Evan Ingram over his last 2 seasons, he has 5 20-plus point half PPR days with plenty of those booms or busts, a lot of them coming in some of those biggest, most important weeks as well. So I kind of cut it off at him. So I do love that kind of range there either way of like George Kittle round 6, Evan Ingram round 7, also really, really solid. But I'll say this. I've been hammering Travis Kelce in round 4. Round 3, he's starting to creep into, and I don't love it there. But in that early round 4 range, give it to me all day. Tight end 2 last year. Didn't top 12 points, though, from week 8 onward the rest of the season. That was bad. I mean, he was horrendous last yeyear, but we've seen that kind of every other year trend with this guy. And now you're getting the guy that was consistently a first rounder for his entire career in round 4. It'd be one thing if we didn't see it all season from Travis Kelce, but then we had that playoff run that I just cannot get out of my mind where he was putting up 170 yards and multiple touchdowns, and back to the Travis Kelce that was a wide receiver 1 at your tight end spot. It was there. And it just seemed like they finally chose to unleash him in the playoffs. He finally had a somewhat drawing defensive attention in Rashee Rice. And now that we have Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, and ideally Rashee Rice for a good portion of the season, when defenses can't key in on Travis Kelce the way he is, yes, there's that risk that maybe they save him for the playoffs again and he doesn't get the full complement of snaps like last year. That probably is the case, but I think that's overbaked into his price here. So I do really love Travis Kelce at his price. I really like all these guys. If McBride falls, love Andrews in round 5. Kincaid is the potential number 1 for the Bills. I think a good chance of being the number 1 weapon for Josh Allen on this Bills team. So all of those guys from rounds 4 through 5, I've been trying to get as many of them. I still think that opportunity cost is high with wide receiver firepower at a premium. But I know we're going to talk about, again, a couple guys I like later, but I was thinking through my head, a good way to kind of compare why this guy in this round versus the other guy in the later round is they do it on the ship chasing plot all the time. And you hear it throughout there. It's called 2v2. So essentially you think about, okay, I get this tight end in round 5 instead of this running back. And then this tight end, this running back in round 8 and instead of this tight end. So there's a pairing here. Like, let me know what you think of this 2v2. Let's say Mark Andrews at round 5 and you get at running back Najee Harris or Zach Moss or Jalen Moore. One of those 3 guys. Let's call it Najee Harris. I think that's fine. You can kind of put in your mind who you like there. Round 8 running back, round 5 tight end. Or we flip that and you get Isaiah Pacheco, who I really like, or Jake Ferguson at tight end. It's actually a pretty tough debate for me. I really can see both sides of that. I feel like so far I've been leaning to the Mark Andrews, Najee Harris side, but I also really do see the upside of like, what if Pacheco, who averaged 23 points per game without McKinnon, and McKinnon's not back here? What if he is just a feature back for an even better Chiefs team? And then Jake Ferguson hits his ceiling, which I really do love Jake Ferguson. So I wanted to throw that one out there because I don't know that it's a clear answer. And that's why I'm having a hard time. Like when we get to this kind of question of who are the top targets of elite tight ends are gone, I do think there's actually like legitimately some potential. You mentioned Ingram, who goes in like that round 7 to 8 range. I've seen him fall like 80s sometimes. It's just great. Like I know I kind of crapped on it, but I still really like Evan Ingram. I think, Ferguson, then you got an elite prospect in Brock Bowers. Like we talk about Kyle Pitts being one of the best prospects coming. Well, then you look at the actual production of Bowers and yards per route run and target share per route and all that. Like it was beyond any, like it would have been a top 2 receiver in this class of elite wide receivers, never mind at a tight end position, even if it wasn't the prettiest landing spot. You got David Njoku, who was the tight end 1 last year from week 8 onward. I went to look at what was McBride's stats as a starter last year because he didn't start till week 8. And I was like, oh yeah, really good, 11.7. the number one tight end was David Njoku from week 8 onward. He averaged 12.9 points per game. And in your playoffs, he had 23, 24, some of those massive spike weeks. And none of those came with Deshaun Watson. So I get that's why he's probably going later. Weirdly, if Joe Flacco was his quarterback entering this year, he might be around 5 to 6 guy as well. But then he's got Jameis Winston on the bench. Maybe Watson does figure it out and get it together. So I love that pocket right there of Ingram, Ferguson, Bowers, and Njoku. You don't have that opportunity cost in round 4 or 5, whether you want to get a Pacheco, who I was just referencing, or if you want to just add on another wide receiver. Because I do think that 2v2 with like the running back comparison, I know I've been rambling. I want to like first get your response to that. But if you do it as a wide receiver comparison, where it's like, okay, round 5 wide receiver, let's toss out, who's one of your favorite round 5 wide receivers? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like Christian Kirk. But he's kind of more round 4 at this point. But I think Kirk and Andrews, they're going at the same price tag, right? So let's say Kirk and Jake Ferguson, or Andrews and Christian Watson. I mean, like who's going to that range? Deontay Johnson, like Jamison Williams? That becomes a lot clearer to me. If we're going to do like a receiver tight end comparison, give me the Ferguson Kirk all day. Running back's a little bit different. So I guess it all comes back to wide receiver firepower to it. You have your 3 wide receivers to start. You build in that flexibility. So now your 2v2 is a running back and tight end instead of a receiver tight end. I know I threw a ton at the wall there, but think about those kind of 2v2s, all that stuff. What's your kind of reaction to that, Mo?
Yeah, so you can go through the 2v2s all day, but I tend to just generally lean towards just the upper tight ends. And it's really not the fact that I think it's not that I have a strong preference. I just want access to one of these guys who I know can provide the top tier spike weeks. And I think that I'm pretty sure I know that Jake Ferguson is not nearly as talented as the guys who are up top. And that's a big reason why he's going behind them. But at the end of the day, he's going to be out there running a ton of routes. He sees red zone usage. So his spike weeks come through getting there on his touchdowns. And I believe you referenced it in your article that you wrote. He was pretty behind in terms of his expected touchdowns based on his red zone usage versus what he actually ended up having last year. So there's room for growth there. I really just think, but that is the case with a lot of these guys. You're getting there on touchdowns. So I've been a proponent of Jake Ferguson throughout the offseason, and I think that there's benefits. But also for me, it's also about how I have to end up building my roster. If I end up waiting until the Ferguson tier, I prefer 2 tight end builds. And if I'm grabbing Ferguson, I feel the need to go with 3 tight ends. I don't really know about you. That's kind of just how you feel with just your comfortability with Jake Ferguson, as well as what you prefer to do in terms of how much you want to allocate to tight end on your roster. And then kind of going back to the 2v2s, in terms of the wide receiver, I mean, come on, in the you were talking about the range of like Deontay, Christian Watson, you can get Rashee Rice right there. He's a great click. He especially if you can tack him on as your wide receiver 4, you kind of go like 3 wide receivers earlier. You grab a tight end and a running back maybe in rounds 4 and 5, and then you can grab Rice in round 7 as your wide receiver 4. I mean, like, come on, it's a great pick in my opinion. But I mean, you don't really want to add him on as like someone you're going to be relying on to shoulder the load through the early season, like your wide receiver 3. But as your 4th or maybe even your 5th, he's going in the 7th round. You can argue that you can add him on as your 5th. I mean, yeah, that's a great pick, but that's kind of getting beside the point. But I think there's different there's arguments to be had one way or the other, but I like Ferguson. It's just I don't as much prefer the 3 tight end build. I prefer to go the 2 with a guy like McBride or Andrews, and you can even add both of those guys onto a roster. I mean, like, I feel like it's not ridiculous to allocate so much draft capital to tight end that you're grabbing like a guy like a McBride or an Andrews and then turning around a couple of rounds later and grabbing Ferguson in the 8th, 9th round. It's not ridiculous. So and that would end up being a 2 tight end build. So I want to bet on the talent of these other guys, but I know that Jake Ferguson can get there with the touchdowns and just usage. So I'm not like trying to badmouth Jake Ferguson. I bet, like, I talked about him on our mid-round breakout show. That was my tight end. Like that was the guy that I talked about. And so I'm obviously a fan, and I think he's a quality pick. And I also think that this is the range. Him, Njoku, and Bowers are the last guys I want to be grabbing as my tight end one. Because I do think, like, while I don't think that they have as much access to the spike weeks, we know that they all do. We've seen it with Njoku and Flacco. Unfortunately, it was Flacco. We saw it with Ferguson in the playoffs, and just like what you said about Bowers as a prospect. So we know that they have the ability to hit those high ceilings. I don't think it's at as much. It's not as probable as the guys who are going ahead. So that's like that's clearly part of the reason why they're going behind, and coupled with talent and situation, what have you. But yeah, I'm pretty comfortable grabbing these guys, and that's kind of the last spot where I want to be grabbing my tight end one. So I would prefer to have one of those guys who goes round 4 through 7, but it's not the end of the world, because I think all these guys have the ability to produce spike weeks.
So I'm going to bring it back to Ferguson, my boy, just make the case for why I get everything you're saying there. But I really do think there's a case here that he might join that group up there. 3rd in routes last year, 7th in targets despite not playing a full-time role till week 6. 5+ targets in 12 games, the most targets from inside the 20, the most targets from inside the 10, the number 2 tight end in end zone targets. I'm taking your stats to make a case against you here. I thought those were all brilliant stats. And what really kind of catches my eye is minus 3.8 touchdowns over expected. So the fewest touchdowns over expected. So very, very due. Nobody is more due for positive TD regression than Ferg. So if you would just assume that he does everything the same way as last year, but then the touchdown luck bounces his way just a little bit, we're talking 4 more touchdowns on his total last year, and we might be already drafting him in that range because we're talking about a Cowboys offense that led the NFL in pass attempts, points, in pace of play over that second half of the year, 2nd in pass rate over expectation after the bye week. They really took off, and now Gallup is gone, and is way more wide open target share. The running back room is that much more atrocious compared to last year. So I just think we could be looking at the number 2 option in a pass-happy attack that Dak Prescott loves to throw to that position historically. And so even if he didn't end up being that much better of a player himself, the situation has improved. The touchdown regression is overdue. And then what if he does improve as a player? All the talk so far is he's one of the first guys in, last guys out. Mike McCarthy's saying so much more to give this season based on what we're seeing. Dak Prescott saying you saw the jump from year 1 to year 2, and now we're expecting an even bigger one. The way he's treated his body, the way he's communicating throughout the offseason, the way we're getting out there catching and throwing. He's a big-time playmaker for this team. And he himself saying, I'm watching film every day, every practicing about what is that little thing I can improve. Just says all those right things. Of course, going to the tight end Kittle camp this year as well to potentially, we've seen so many tight ends go there and just ultimately take that next step in their career. So I really think there's a chance, just based on the volume that he saw in the red zone last year and just overall route share and the ability that what if he does take another step as a player. We're going to be talking about this guy's around 5 or 6 pick next year. They can get in round 8. So then those 2v2s do end up looking quite a bit better, especially when you look at it through the wide receiver lens. So I am really thinking that, like, yes, elite tight end, I still do love getting Andrews round 5. If any of those guys, McBride, Andrews, any of them fall to round 5, I do often hammer it. I think it's tough to pass up. But I am okay getting Jake Ferguson as just a one the number 1 guy in a 2 tight end build. But I often do love going. Probably my favorite strategy right now is getting like a Ferguson if I'm going to do that. And then if Njoku comes back to me in round 9, Bowers is there in round 9. One of those guys often does fall to that 100 to 110 range. So it's pretty easy to get a Jake Ferguson and then one of those other like top 8 to 9 guys. And then the cutoff hits hard and it's like, oh, I don't want any of these guys till pick 150, and maybe we could transition to that. But if I can get 2 of those like 80 to 120 guys, I really think you're going to give yourself a shot at those spike weeks at nearly the same rate as those elite tight ends, but without having to invest that 5th round capital. It's just an interesting strategy. I like playing elite tight end or this way. I really don't like the 3 tight end punt type of situations this year, but that's kind of what I found myself leaning into, is that 80 to 100 pocket, messing around and seeing like, is that going to be the answer? Is that the skeleton key this year, the trickiest position to figure out? That's kind of where I'm living. It is this range that's on the TV, the screen there, the Fergusons, the Bowers, the Njoku. If I can get 2 of those guys, I really like it. And then the hard cutoff. But I don't know. Would you be okay with Ferguson as your tight end 1 and a 2 tight end build if you did have like Bowers or Njoku as the next guy underneath him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. It's kind of just with the way that the ADPs are shaking out, it's a little bit harder to do that. You need either Bowers or Njoku to slip like 6+ spots. So, and I found that a lot of people kind of think that the same way that we do. Like if Ferguson goes off the board and it's just Njoku and Bowers there, people are like, oh shit, I need to grab a tight end here. So, I mean, like, yeah, they slide, but I mean, I think it kind of goes back to the point that I made earlier. Like with Ferguson, I am more than likely it ends up being a 3 tight end build, and I'm personally wanting to build 2 tight end teams. And I think it's acceptable to do double tap tight end in round 8 and 9 and just be done with it. I think that is a fine 2 tight end build, grabbing Ferguson and Bowers or Njoku, but it doesn't seem to happen. Excuse me. It doesn't seem to happen for me that often. And so I end up, if I take Ferguson or one of these other guys, I end up with 3 tight end builds, and I'm not usually the most thrilled about it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how we can build some of that. We'll go to the punt. Sounds like this sounds so ugly. It sounds like a Jake Ferguson, Zach Ertz year for me, says Meek Hill. But I kind of love that comment. Like, that really is like, okay, we're getting our Ferguson. Zach Ertz is going to be way more annoying than Ben Sinnott owners think he's going to be. Like, I wouldn't be shocked at all. We've seen Kingsbury just funnel targets to Zach Ertz before. So I wouldn't be shocked at all. I haven't drafted a ton of Zach Ertz. I just can't do it. It makes me puke. It really does. Like, I actually throw up when it happens, but I get it. Like, I do get it for sure. And Thaddeus, my man, and a ton of comments. I can't wait to bring these all up once we get drafting in just a few minutes here. We're going to talk about our favorite punts, and then we'll get firing up one draft. But we talked about this idea of Kincaid being the clear first or second option. I mean, I think it's closer to the first than the second at this point. Do you think Kincaid's going to be that number 1 in this offense? Like, who do you see leading the targets for the Bills before we get into punt tight ends?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the favorite in terms of targets, but number 1 in terms of fantasy production, he's probably the favorite still, but I would say that I would be more shocked if someone else leads the team in targets than I would be more shocked if someone else leads the team in fantasy production. Like, just because of like what Kincaid does in the offense, it's like that 8-yard, 10-yard, not 8-yard, but like 10-yard ADOT. And he's like getting all of these, like, it's going to be a lot of targets, but like, they're not going to be the types that set him up for massive splash plays that are going to drive his fantasy production. So, I mean, I think he will be the number 1 in terms of targets, but I don't think it would be insane. Like, if Keon Coleman hits, it's not crazy that he would end up as the number 1 fantasy producer. So we'll see. But yeah, I think he's definitely the first or second, 100% the first or second. Yeah,
I do love your idea too, and we're going to talk about these punts. But the more I'm thinking about like what you're saying here, the idea of like one of the huge advantages of elite QB and elite tight end. I know we haven't done our QB show yet, but I do love that idea of like only having to take two guys, especially when we talk about. We hate how much this late round tight end crop. It's not one where we like dipping our toes in 3 times. So it really does make sense, because I think that does play into what our advantages have been these last couple of years. You just said Tank Dell, Kyron Williams. My teams did really well last year because of my late round prowess. And if I'm having to take a tight end in that range that I really don't like, that does give up the shot of me landing that next Tank Dell, that next Kyron Williams, which, every year, there's never going to be like a Puka Nacua just like he hit last year. But there are always these late round values that end up panning out. And I think that's one of our better traits, especially once training camp hits and we start to read through that news. I think we are really good at sniffing those things out. And so you are right. Like that is one of the sneaky benefits. You can do those 2v2s all day, but if that's also 2v2 plus who's your round 18 guy, it does change things, and you should think those things through. So I think that's a really good point as well. But to change the directions, if we are punting, if we are going to start slamming 3 tight ends, our boy Thaddeus said, his favorite is Pat Freiermuth. I see that. He is still in the range, though, where there's we talked about those pockets of wide receivers. I absolutely love the Jalen Polks, the rookie receivers there, the Jermaine Burtons, even the Ricky Pearsalls. Like, I don't find myself clicking Muth a ton. I do sometimes if I have, like, let's say a Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Kelsey. I do like that week 17 correlation because I do think Arthur Smith does facilitate some solid tight end production, but we also saw the tight end headaches we got. If you combine Jonnu and Kyle Pitts, that was nice. But I don't think we can just say, Freiermuth's going to be both of them together because we're already seeing Darnell Washington get hyped up as a great beast move around guy and get ready to learn Arthur Smith. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't know that I love Freiermuth. I think he's a solid player. This was a round 8 to 9 guy last year that I could see re-emerging as one of those types of guys this season. But I do think in a team that's going to run the ball probably 600 times this year, it did add Roman Wilson to kind of take some of those middle of the field stats. Freiermuth's not one I'm clicking. If he was going a round or 2 later, and when he falls past ADP, certainly I do like it. But unless I'm trying to week 17 correlate with some cheap stacks, I just find this receiver range to be so much more attractive than Freiermuth. So I'm even going later when I'm punting touchdowns. Have you been sniffing any Freiermuth, or do you kind of look at your tight ends later when you're punting?
Yeah, so like he's getting that steam from mini camp and stuff, like just what's been going on lately. But I'm not super buying into it. Just the overall production of pass catchers in general in Arthur Smith's offense has been just criminally bad. Just criminal all around. And like you go back and look at like the overall like tight end usage and just like targets, just like raw targets. Like the tight ends in Atlanta were highly utilized, but it was split up between a bunch of guys. I mean, like you said, like Darnell Washington, get ready to learn Connor Hayward, and guess who else is in the building over from Atlanta? We got Michael Pruitt is back over. He like saw 25 targets last year. Like, it's not a lot, but it's not nothing. And like he's bringing over all of his guys. He's bringing over
Patterson, hey baby,
Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson. Like he's bringing his guys with him, and like get ready for another just disastrous like split like disgusting tight end usage. I mean, like I think Freiermuth is like better than all these guys, but I mean, just with what Arthur Smith has done, like, is it crazy to think that we're going to see like Darnell Washington will be on the field as a blocker just because that's like more his skill set. But is it crazy to think we're going to see another 20 targets to Michael Pruitt again? Like it's not completely out of the picture. So I don't know, like I just with how Arthur Smith uses his tight ends, it's not something that I'm super interested in. So not 25 last year for Pruitt. He had 12, but like, I mean, it's still like, what the hell is Michael Pruitt doing out on an NFL football field? And is it crazy to think he's going to be back out there? Like, I'm not super interested in general in investing in these pass catchers for Pittsburgh. But I'm more along the lines that I'm going super late when I'm punting on these tight ends. So let's go take a look at some more of the really late guys. Who are the guys that you're kind of targeting in this range? ADPs like 150 or so to 180.
Yeah, that's exactly where I start. That's the sweet spot. Those rookie receivers I'm interested are mostly gone. And I really actually don't mind. I know we talk about how we don't like this pool quite as much as last year. I think that kind of more applies to those really late rounds. Like there's a point once you hit Noah Fant, and I know he's kind of everybody's darling this year, and I understand the argument. I like him too. Once you hit him, after him, it gets dreadful. But I really like this, what we kind of see on the screen here. I love Hunter Henry this year. I'm a big believer in Drake May eventually getting a start. Even if not, I think Jacoby Brissett is significantly better than whatever we saw last year as a Pats fan. So I think Hunter Henry, who's consistently he was the number 1 tight end through 2 weeks last year. We've seen some solid spikes out of the guy before, plus a nice sturdy floor. I think all those receivers are interesting, but here's the one I'm like, I know Hunter Henry is going to run nearly every route in this offense with ideally a better quarterback situation, ideally some better play calling, the play caller who facilitated some of those massive games from David Njoku last year. I'm a huge fan of Hunter Henry. He's actually my second owned tight end at this point. of the offseason. I also really like Tyler Conklin. I kind of call it my AFC East trio. I have three guys that, like, if I'm going late round tight end, I love going bang, 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 this AFC East trio. One of them's Hunter Henry. The next is Tyler Conklin. We've seen Robert Tonyan catch like 15 touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers before. So if he can do it, I don't doubt that Tyler Conklin, who's actually had 87 targets for 3 exact seasons in a row, if he gets 87 of those targets from Aaron Rodgers now this year, I think he could do a ton of damage. We know Garrett Wilson's going to be the alpha there, but after him, sure, I like Corley and maybe Mike Williams gets healthy and finally does something for a consistent season. But even so, I do think we've seen Aaron Rodgers facilitate at minimum some solid touchdown production from him. And then my other AFC to round out that trio, my favorite tight end, my highest rostered tight end of this season, given the price tag especially, is Jonnu Smith. He's even lower than Noah Fant, Isaiah Likely, even below Chiga Konku and the foot surgery of Juwan Johnson. I think this is criminal. Everybody, Miami doesn't throw the tight ends. Mike McDaniels himself said, you don't go with what's happened in past years and then just apply it to this year. We have never had a tight end like Jonnu Smith. Goes out and calls him the Yak King. This guy had the 2 fastest ball carrier speeds at tight end last year, number 1 and number 2 on this list. And who is better at maximizing speed in space than Mike McDaniels? Nobody, in my opinion. I think there is nobody better at that. So with so many dangerous weapons around him, I get, that means his total touches are likely to be fewer in this offense. But man, when he gets that ball, it's going to be great screens. It's going to be with no defensive attention. There's going to be some weeks where we get like 50-yard Jonnu Smith touchdowns, and you're not going to get that at tight end really anywhere, but certainly not at pick 190 to 200. And if that so happens to be, I love Miami stacks, so if that so happens to be in week 17, I'm all about Jonnu Smith. I think he is going criminally undervalued. Maybe it is just so many other weapons he just can't ever gain himself any footing here. I don't buy that, though. I think we saw Durham Smythe play like 80% of the snaps last year. If he can play 80% of the snaps, I get that the usage wasn't there because it was Durham Smythe. This is a different type of weapon. I think he's going to unlock yet another layer of the Mike McDaniels offense. He is far and away. I have him ranked above pretty much all the guys I've talked about, but he just goes 2 rounds later. I think he's going to be the answer. That is going to be the tight end punt of the year where people look back and such a hideous pool. I mean, look around him. Mike Gesicki, Jelani Woods, Jatavian Sanders. Oh, boy, that gets hideous. So those 3 AFC tight ends, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, and then Jonnu Smith, those are my punts. Those are my boys. I love going those 3 guys. Is there anybody else? Do you like any of those guys? Anyone else you toss out there? And then we can maybe start firing up this draft, baby.
Yeah. I'll get us into this draft here soon. I have a ton of Jonnu Smith already. So I'm on board with that. I think the argument's fair, especially with where he's going. He saw some steam earlier in the offseason, but he has quickly fallen back into the range of the 17th round. So I'm grabbing him when I'm punting on tight end. And a lot of it is having to do with what stacks I'm building out. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. And I find myself grabbing a fair amount of the Titan stacks. So I get to Chig a fair amount just because he's a guy who had really solid peripherals and in his rookie season, and he's dirt cheap. And we know that the offensive changes are going to just improve the outlook for pass catchers as a whole. So I'm getting to him. One guy that I think I should be getting to more is Tyler Conklin. I don't have a ton of him, but yeah, the consistency of his ability to earn targets and them being Aaron Rodgers targets now. If he can convert on those touchdowns, I think it will be a little bit of a better season for him, and he could end up paying off at his price. And then I am obligated to point out Jelani Woods didn't play last season because he somehow missed a full season with a hamstring injury. I don't really know the ins and outs of that. I'm not a professional athlete, so I don't know how a hamstring injury keeps you off the field for 18 weeks. But you really, like I said, it really doesn't make sense unless you're building out a stack that involves Anthony Richardson. And like, there's also the argument that like, you don't even really need to stack Anthony Richardson just because of what he provides on the ground. But I'd be remiss if I did not at least bring him up because he is quite literally free, and it is just betting on an athletic freak of nature. He scored a literal 10.0 perfect score on his relative athletic score. So it's worth noting. I'm not drafting a bunch of him, but it's like betting on athleticism, especially at tight end. It's not a bad idea, and you can get them at usually the very last pick of the draft, like literally the last pick, or just with your 18th round pick. And historically, the Colts have used a conglomerate of tight ends, and they've got a couple of guys returning on the roster. So I would not expect Woods to emerge from this tight end group. If anyone does, it would be him. But you're once again, like most of these guys, you're kind of just betting on him to catch a touchdown in the right week. But if I had to pick one out of like this group of guys who outside of Jonnu, who I think like has a path to being like not just like being a legitimate producer and not just a guy who relies on touchdowns from week to week and is like somewhat talented, I would say it's Chigakonkwo. We saw like productive high efficiency metrics when he was a rookie, and I'm really bullish on the changes that are coming to the Tennessee offense with Brian Callahan involved. And the Callahan offense hasn't really involved tight ends super highly, but also they weren't super talented tight ends really ever. It was why am I blanking on his name? CJ Uzama, and then it was Irv Smith and Hayden Hurst 2 years ago. So not like super talented guys. And I think Chigakonkwo, he's at the stage in his career where we're not entirely sure what he's giving us from a talent perspective. And like I said, like it was like his rookie year was like 3 yards per route run. Like it was completely ridiculous. It was nonsense. And so I'm willing to take that bet, especially when you can get him so late. And I'm really just tacking him on to my Titan stacks, but I'm doing those Titan stacks fairly often because if I just don't have any really obvious ones set up, or like a lot of like three QB builds, and I want to be stacking my quarterbacks, like I'm pretty regularly grabbing Hopkins in that 7th round range. And then if I don't have anything like super obvious set up, like you can just go pluck Levis off the board, add in a Okonkwo, you've got a double stack right there, like so easily. So that's like a part of the reason why I'm just getting to Okonkwo more than these other guys. But I think, yeah, now that I think the two that are the most obvious for me, not the most obvious, but I'm getting to the most often is Okonkwo and Jonnu Smith. And then the final guy that I want to highlight is Taysom Hill. Over on DraftKings, he's still qualified as a tight end, not a quarterback. So he goes in like the 15th round a lot of the time. And now with this injury to Juwan Johnson, and all of like the steam about coming out of training camp about how he's been used like all over the field, like in like I saw a graphic, like it was just talking about where he lined up in these practices in minicamp. He lined up like as a halfback, as a fullback, like out wide, as a tight end, as a quarterback, and like that you can get a two touchdown week out of Taysom Hill in any given week. And when you can get him in the 15th round and he's got tight end eligibility, especially with the new injury to Juwan Johnson, like why not? Like I said, like you're really relying on touchdowns out of the guys in this range. And for 100% fact that the 2 tight end weeks can happen for Taysom Hill. And that takes us perfectly into the draft. So we've got the 7th pick here. But anything else you wanted to add on about like the punting tight ends before we get into this draft?
Yeah, and we can start pulling in some comments, but just a few responses there. I don't have a ton of Chig, which is surprising because I love Levis. He's my second rostered QB at this point. I love Titan stacks. I love going Calvin Ridley. So I should probably be sneaking in a little bit more of Chig in these late rounds because of the athleticism of everything you say. And I love that week 17 game between them and the Jags. So that's a fun one to stack up. So I do see myself adding a little bit more Chig to the profile. I often just find myself in that situation where it's Chig or Jonnu, and I can't not go Jonnu for myself. And I know that's probably a weakness that I need to try to overcome, but I am so sold on Jonnu this year. And in that sense of stacking week 17, one other tight end that I don't get a ton, but I see as a potential last round option is Jatavian Sanders. I get a lot of Bucks. I love the prices on the Bucks this year. And so he's a nice bring back for that. We already had Dave Canales talk about how this is a tight end friendly offense. And we saw, I think Cade Otton was second in tight end routes last year. And I know he didn't get a ton of targets, but that's because he's Cade Otton. He's not that good. And I don't know. Yeah, you got a few mouths in Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, maybe Leggett ends up being a thing. I know we're about to pick. But that's another tight end that I could maybe shout out there in the late rounds. But it does get ugly fast. Like I think our summary is we love elite tight end. I like going Bijan here at 7.
Yeah, I need to get more. I need to get more Bijan, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of 7 picks lately, and it's almost always Bijan if one of St. Brown and Jefferson, who Jefferson routinely was falling to 7. It's not happening anymore, which is unfortunate. I was loving it. The one thing about going running back early here is we talked about going elite tight end, but there's only, as we talked about last week's show with wide receivers, you can only take so many detours in those first 7 rounds. You really do want at least 3 wide receivers in your first 5 picks, at least 4 in your first 7. So going Bijan here is going to make it tough to stray into that elite tight end range unless we really get like 3 great tight receivers we love in these next few. Or maybe a tight end falls in the 5th that we love. We'll see how it ends up going and playing out here. So one thing that does stink about going running back early, and why I love Bijan builds, I love hero running back builds, but we might be looking closer to that Ferguson, Njoku, or even a dreaded punt situation. But ultimately, yeah, if we were going to say, like, what was your favorite tight end strategy? If we were summarizing everything we talked about, I think we laid out cases for all of them. We gave targets at every single one. Do you have a personal one that you feel like you're hitting more often than others?
I mean, I'm really just trying to grab just at least one person before Njoku, Bowers are off the board. That's just I just know that I need access to those spike weeks to win those tournaments, and I know that there is no one after those guys who I think I can legitimately get spike weeks out. And the tough one with Njoku is the fact that those all came with with Flacco. So that's tough. And Otton had a spike week, and like you said, it's just he's running a lot of routes. So, but it was like one spike week where he scored 20 points.
And it went pretty well for Otton. Like I don't know, we'll see. But he's not a guy, we didn't even talk about him. Bucks builds, again, I like him. I do like.
You're just betting on him being out there. That's all you're betting on, and it's not a bet on talent. It's not a bet on like a super high quality offense. Like, it's good offense, but yeah, it's not a super interesting bet to me. Other than like, hopefully he runs a ton of routes, and like it's just a week where he ends up with like 10 targets, and that's really the only way you're getting there. And like, that was the one week he paid off. So here I'm good with Debo. I'm good. And anyone you're specifically targeting here?
It looks like Adams is gone. I do like Nico over Debo myself. I'm cool with either of them though.
Yeah, let's go Nico.
All righty. We go Nico here. I do think we have to go wide receiver there, no doubt about it. Charlie coming in saying, "What's good, gents? Good to see you." Charlie, I thought Krona asked a good question here in terms of thoughts on taking tight end 1 over a QB if in round 3 or 4. So my reaction to that, again, it depends if we're talking home leagues or best ball, but specifically in best ball, it's not necessarily a matter of like tight end 1 over a QB. It's more so tight end 1 over wide receiver at that point, as the wide receiver firepower still out there. Because if it is, it's really hard for me to go a tight end until I'd say like Tank Dell is gone. Some people might cut it off at T. Higgins. I don't personally love T. Higgins myself. But unless like Zay, Flowers, Tank Dell, I do love Amari Cooper more than most. I like George Pickens a lot more than most. So to me, it's less a question of over a QB, whereas it is, do I have my 3rd or 4th wide receiver at that point? Now, I guess let's think of this question through the idea of, okay, I've gone 3 wide receivers. I've done what I'm supposed to do. I've stayed true structurally. And now in round 4, I have a choice of like Josh Allen or Travis Kelce, which has happened actually in a bunch of slows I've been in lately. I've literally had that same exact decision, like 3 straight drafts. And it's hard for me. I've alternated. I'm kind of mixing of both because we'll talk about elite quarterbacks next week. Like, there's a lot of validity to all this spike week stuff we're talking about. Like, there's very few quarterbacks that can go and get you 30. And Josh Allen regularly does it. And he's so safe and get to that nice floor, and it's less injury risk. So it is that debate of like, where does Kelsey versus Allen come in? How have you kind of built it up before? But to me, if I don't have 3 wide receivers yet, by round 3 or 4, I can't even consider a quarterback or a tight end at that point. I don't know how. I know we're going to pick in a sec, Mo. So then maybe you can kind of tackle this. If I had good in my head, I know I kind of gave a non-answer there of like I'm mixing in both. I guess I would say I probably more often go Kelsey than I go Josh Allen. I kind of go for the elite tight end there in that range. If Laporta falls to round 4, I certainly go him in that range more so than I'm taking Allen. But man, do I love Allen. Like he's my 4th exposed QB too. So I've been doing I find myself getting an elite QB or an elite tight end in round 3, 4 very often when I'm in that kind of bottom range and I already have 3 good receivers that I feel good about. All righty. So it's on us. Nice. I say Cooper Kupp's the absolute smash here.
Yeah, that's who I've got.
I love Kyron, and I think this is the time of year to be drafting Kyron, but having Bijan already, that is a unique, like, there's not going to be a lot of Kyron Bijan teams out there. I think we got to go Kupp. We got to stay true to the build.
Yeah, I'm not getting behind.
Okay, I'm with you. And hey, maybe Kyron does loop around to us. You never know. I do think he's going to become an early second. I think we talked about this last week, like not early second, but like late second by the round 3, he's gone type of guy, especially once more casual drafters are getting in there. So like, this is where I do want to start getting more Kyron. I love what this guy did in terms of Puka, Adams, and Kyron. Like he started with his 2 receivers. It gave him the flexibility to pounce on Kyron, a falling value there. That being said, I do love also Blake Corum at his price. So I get it, but this is where I'd want to be getting Kyron. And again, I don't think you'd see a ton of Bijan Kyron teams out there because it's either going to be no one's taking him in round 2. And I think soon he's going to creep up to like, you're not going to get him into round 3 with his health checking out. So I don't know. I know in our draft, you weren't going to do it. So I'll mix that in kind of on my own with a little Kyron. Yesterday, I did do a Bijan. I think it was either Nico or Adams. And then Achane was there in round 3. And I was like, all right, screw it. I'm doing it. And I actually didn't hate my wide receivers. I fell a little behind. It wasn't my favorite, but 2-5-9-2 build, I think, is what I ended up doing. And like I'm good enough with my late round receiver calls. I'll have to send you what that team came out to be, so you maybe won't be as terrified to get too far behind. I do love Cooper Kupp though. But back to Connor's question, which I rambled about for a bit and didn't let you answer. What do you think in terms of like if you're staring at a QB or tight end in round 3, 4?
So in best ball, like why not both? Like you can get Lamar and Andrews in round 4, 5. So
I love that.
Like you can do both in best ball, but in home leagues, I go quarterback. I'm a fan of going elite quarterback, just because like we've talked about, you can get quality, like replaceable production in the late rounds of drafts and at tight end. And I'll keep going after we make our pick here. So anyone?
I like Pickens.
So Pickens, we can play the Lamar Andrews stat game, but that would be a bit much.
I don't think Andrews is making it back to us. I see a lot of teams plucking him. Where did Diggs go? Because
Diggs is well gone.
Yeah, so no, I know he's gone, but I'm saying like a lot of like Houston correlation happens there. I personally like Pickens. Did he go though?
Yeah, he's gone. I got Kirk queued up, and then
I'd go Kirk here. I think that gets us some wide receiver firepower, bakes in some flexibility here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like doing that. I think it's a little early for McBride, although that does give us the Cooper Kupp correlation. But that's what's tricky when you go running back early. You kind of need to get those 3 wide receivers out of the way, your next 3 picks, and then you see what falls. Maybe Andrews does fall. I think certainly now that we don't have Lamar, there's a 0% chance we end up getting Andrews. But I was trying that build a ton, and it just wasn't hitting. I think somebody goes Andrews. He's got a lot of steam from a lot of great experts. And whether it's to correlate with week 17 with a Houston piece, which would have been nice, I guess. So that's another reason why we could have considered Lamar there. Or just like, I just see him going. And now we got a bully tight end, which I guess that was one thing we didn't bring up. But through 4 years of data, any year can bring any type of results. But one consistent trend has been bully tight ends, one of the worst. And it makes sense. You would really very rarely go quarterback. and you have one roster spot, I guess you could sneak a tight end into the flex, but realistically, that's probably not even happening. Like you're more often getting that 10 to 11 points from a round 15 wide receiver if you really were interested in that. It's just so much opportunity cost for this type of talent in this type of range to go bully tight end. We talked about a couple times where I've gone it because Kittle fell to around like 7, and I had McBride, but I was like, I'm not going to pass on Kittle, who he makes more sense with it because you're going to get like 4 to 5 huge weeks, and then most of the rest are going to be kind of crap. He's the kind of perfect bully tight end because then you're not like you got your nice stable guy in front of him, and then you got your spike guy that can come in at any moment and just clean the place out. But you're paying around 7 price. Going 2 tight ends in the first 5 rounds, I can't get behind it. I think it's terrible.
That is, yeah. Well, and like the difference in bully tight end this year is like we've said, yeah, it's like it just in terms of the capital that you have to invest, it's just so much less significant. So I'm a fan of it. That's just kind of my 2 cents, and it's probably if it's going to be viable in a season, this will be the season that it is viable. So we are about to be up on the clock, and why we keep like not getting fully to Krana's question. But do you want to go another receiver? No, I probably wouldn't go receiver here.
I mean, so looking at what's available to us,
I would go ETN for sure if he slides.
Yeah, that's a pretty big fall for him, pretty big ADP gap. I do like Kincaid. I think he is a tier above the other tight ends that like
he goes anyways.
He goes anyways. Is it our pick right here?
No. Okay, so ETN goes. We can do Stroud with Nico Collins, which I think is not a bad pick, but I see him slide a lot.
I do too.
I don't like Reed at all. I'm Ridley, Worthy, or Stroud are my picks. Any preference for you?
I kind of like the Ridley correlation with Christian Kirk. You know I'm a big fan of Ridley, so
yeah, I'm fine with that.
I like that play.
I'm fine with that.
And then we can see if Stroud makes it around back to us.
Yeah, and I like setting ourselves up to take Ingram in his range. Will be up 1 pick after his ADP, so I like setting ourselves up for that and not diverting
in round
away
7, you're
from
saying
receiver.
like in that next, like, yeah, not this round but the one after.
Yeah, in the 7th round he'll be teed up for us, hopefully.
Yeah, that makes a nice
especially with a bunch of people ahead of us in that range having tight end already. So
yeah, with the Tank Dell, and this typically happens, but with the Tank Dell drafter right there, I do think it's probably unlikely we get Stroud.
I don't think we're going to see him.
Like I do really like Stroud, but I just think he's a little too rich for like a pretty much a pure pocket passer.
He's falling significantly. Like you were seeing him in the 4th round, like up there near Mahomes and stuff. And now like I was in a slow today and he went like 70 or something. It was like 68 or 69. And he went 1 pick before me. I had it was either Diggs or Dell there he goes. But he's sliding. Like not only has his ADP in general, but like he's just individually and sliding. But let me finally get to Krana's question about elite tight end versus quarterback. In home leagues, I'm going quarterback just because like we talked about in the show, like there's so much replaceable production at tight end and you need the access to the spike weeks in best ball to win, but you don't need it really in home leagues. So I'm much bigger fan of getting the edge at quarterback in home league, grabbing an Allen, grabbing a Hurts, and just like kind of punting at tight end because I know I can like from time to time get the 12 points that I need to just get on with it later on in drafts.
Yeah, I'm at the exact same way. Those spikes, you don't need to separate from 534 people in week 17.
Exactly.
You just need to beat your 12 people league. And just anecdotally, I had Josh Allen. I ended up testing it out last year. I was like, I'm going to just go Josh Allen round 3 in pretty much all leagues. I had him in 5 out of 6 leagues. I made the finals in 4 out of those 6 and won 3 out of 4. And I'm going to go right back to the well. I know Josh Allen isn't quite as well set up this year, but I love it. All right, let's see who we're going to pick here. And then we'll get back to, Thaddeus, get your guys, all the usual talk. But I love Kenneth Walker. I like Kittle. I do think it's a good spike week. I think McConkey's really nice in this range and could see him rising this summer.
So we're setting up to take Ingram later, so I don't think Kittle. Yeah, I either Walker or
you're gonna get timed out in a sec. So
yeah, let's go Walker.
I don't have a lot of Walker, and I would love to add more of him. I think he kind of there's a drop off at running back, even though we talked about loving that round 7, 8, 9 range. It is still great, but I think Walker in this new Ben Grubb attack. It's Ben. I always mix up Ben and Ryan. I don't know why. It's Ben Grubb, right?
Who is? No, it's Ryan Grubb. Who is Ben Grubb?
I don't know. Maybe I just made him up, and now I can't get it out of my freaking head.
It's definitely someone because I keep confusing it too.
Maybe I planted it in your head.
I don't know. It's Ryan Grubb who is
Grubb.
Whoever the new Grubb coordinator.
He's definitely talked a ton about bringing a creative run game. He was an O-line coach first, and everybody's hyping about how he's going to throw so much more, and probably will. But I don't think that hurts Kenneth Walker. I think his offense is going to be much faster paced. We know Walker's a touchdown beast. He's one of the rare running backs that does have that speed to rip like a 60-yarder out of nowhere. He's somebody I was hammering in the big board draft, and then I just haven't been getting a ton of in these drafts, but I love him. I think we're going to look at like him going in round 6 and be like, why wasn't this guy not going in round 3? Why, he belongs at least with the Travis Etiennes and the Pachecos. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of going him there, especially because we set ourselves up well at receiver. We got our 4 receivers after a running back. It baked in the flexibility. We didn't need to get a 5th guy there. Like you said, if it wasn't a Jag stack we're building out, I probably would have preferred going Kittle in round 6 there over Kenneth Walker. But that's kind of why I do like Evan Ingram here. It makes it nice. I mean, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we hope he gets to us. But I do find if I have Christian Kirk already, Ingram typically wraps around. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out on this one. If he doesn't, would you reach here for Jake Ferguson just to lock up a tight end?
Or Rashee Rice? If it's easy Rashee Rice.
I mean, maybe it's easy Rashee Rice anyways, and then Ferguson on the way back. I do love getting Rashee Rice. This is the time right now. Like, we don't know what the suspension is yet. So I think it's going to probably be less than people are expecting with charges getting dropped and different things. That's the game you play. If you're drafting now, you're trying to capitalize. Like, there's very rare situations where someone's going to leap 5 rounds or fall 5 rounds. He's in that bucket where he could go either way. He's not going to be going round 7 soon, though. It's either going up or going down. I don't know. I'm open to Rashee Rice here, unless you really want the Ingram correlation, which I'm fine with.
Rashee Rice, wide receiver 5, is too. Let's do it.
It's too tempting. And what if Ingram makes it back?
I don't know about all that, but
this is the time. We're not going to have this. We're going to have Ingram round 7 all summer. That's not going to change. There's nothing could happen. Even Christian Kirk could get hurt. I don't think Evan Ingram maybe he'd go a round higher. Maybe, probably not. So either way, this is like, if we're going to draft this early, like psychos, you go for the big swings. And actually, this is my first time. I haven't even said it yet, but 220, if you here with us, you love to see that. We keep crossing the 200 border. If you don't mind hitting that thumbs up button, it really does help make sure this gets out to people after the fact. On YouTube, on Twitter, shares, likes, retweets. It really does help us grow and get onto that new audience. So thank you so much. It's so awesome to have, routinely over 200 of you joining us on these Monday streams. We really do appreciate it. And any likes, shares, retweets, subs on YouTube, and anybody checking out rotostreetjournal.com is where you find all our written content, all my rankings. I do need to go through an update. I have school ending tomorrow for the summer. I have a half day and I'm on summer, baby. So full-time Wolf is about to be unleashed. So make sure you're bookmarking rotostreetjournal.com, following me at rotostreetwolf, Mo_FFB. Have your boys here. Had to get that midstream plug in there. I didn't do it at the top like I'm supposed to. So here we go. Thank you guys again for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And if you like it, those thumbs up do greatly help. As I think this is a good time to bring him to get your guys. I think Rashee Rice at this point, it's somebody I'm trying to get more of. He's one of my guys in round 7 right now. So I think Thaddeus, we followed your advice in this case. Even though Evan Ingram made more structural sense, I like getting us some Rashee Rice here. Because even if it's 4 games, even if it's 6 games, as our wide receiver 5, we're talking playoff times when we need him.
Yeah, I don't care. It's our wide receiver 5. If it's 8 games, who cares? We're gonna have what we expect to be a top 24 wide receiver or better production for down the stretch and in the fantasy playoffs. Like, oh well, and there goes Ferguson. So it looks like we will be dipping into the
we're going to play our tight end punt game. So as we both preach that it's not a great year to punt at tight end, you always take what the draft gives you. And so we will be punting tonight. That's fine. I want to see, again, if you get the Hunter Henry, the Jonnu, the AFC East, the Jonnu, the Conklin, the Hunter Henry, I really do actually kind of like that. And you can go back to back to back, get those 3 tight ends in a row, and it typically works out fine. So yeah, we're on the punt train, unless Bowers and Njoku fall next round, I'd say. Yeah, get your guys for sure. Why don't we look and see who's up here for us?
So I've got just queued up building out a Tennessee stack already. Then I've got Bowers and Njoku there, but it's in the pocket of the draft where typically running back. So that's where I'm leaning towards. Zamir White, Jalen Warren's there. Not really any of these quarterbacks. We're not building out any of these stacks really, so it doesn't really make sense. Yeah, so I'm thinking running back here. Any preference? White, Warren, or Swift? Or I guess now just White or Warren.
I like going Warren myself. Now that we have Rashee Rice, build up that Chiefs, Steelers. I just like getting a Steelers running back in nearly every draft, and I like Zamir White. But I don't know. I'm just not convinced. I'm not completely convinced yet. They did mention, I saw, recent comments from Pierce there, Antonio Pierce, about like him being a 300 touch guy and like the type of guy that can shoulder the load and surprising speed and all that good stuff. It is exciting. The fact that we already had 2 good running backs too, makes me lean Warren, because now we're looking more so for the guy that, like, I don't know that White's going to truly change leagues. I think he's going to be nice, steady, like get you 12 to 15. That's kind of what he did as a starter last year. Whereas Warren, if something happened to Najee Harris or if he's just better and Arthur Smith decides, like, I'm going to turn the keys over to this guy, top 5 in every single efficiency metric of running backs last year, an offense that, even if he is the second fiddle, is going to run the ball 600 times. Like, I'm a big fan of the Steelers run game right now. And I think Warren is – I have a good amount of Najee, and I think I'm about like 26 Najee, 20 Jalen Warren. I kind of want them to be close to even. And it is. It's already pretty close to even, but that's where I'm kind of leaning there. So I like it.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Both scooping up a ton of the Steelers running backs just because of how run heavy. Did you see the quote? I've seen it like circling around, and as Njoku goes off the board, so we will be punting tight end.
No
doubt. Yeah. So not really. We could do a Daniels here and just like do a late Washington thing. How do you feel about that?
I love it, just because we have Bijan right there too. It's a week 17 correlation.
Yeah,
if Daniels makes it to us, where's the Terry team though? Is what I'm kind of thinking.
He's
already passed him. He already made it past it. So yeah, if Daniels makes it to us, why don't we go back? Let's check it out though, because I think, like, isn't Jordan Love and Dak there as well?
Yeah.
Do you want to go back to that screen for me?
Oh, my bad. I've got. So yeah, but I mean, we could do Love and build out something late, but I like the options for Daniels later
too. I like any of these 3. I'm going to let you make the call at QB. I think all of them are great. I think we could get Daniels wraparound though, is what I'm thinking.
I went Daniels there.
You wouldn't let it happen. Okay, fair enough.
I just like the ability and options to build out the Daniel stack later than I do with these other guys. I mean, it's a mad dash for those for a lot of the Packers guys, and then you just see Dobbs go right off the board there. So like, if you grab Love there, like what are you gonna do? Grab like Kraft or Musgrave later? Like I don't know. And like,
I gotta do, like, you get Wicks, you get Lloyd, you get one of the you get Musgrave. I like that. I mean, it's just because Watson, who knows? Obviously, it's nicer if you had Reed. I would say this: if Dak does somehow wrap around to us, he's probably not going to make it past this Ferguson team. I'd be stunned if he does. You can also build out like Brandon Cooks, Zeke Elliott, Jalen Tolbert, which again, it's ugly. I know, I get that, but this is it's too good of quarterback value to be passing up on. I'll figure out how to stack these guys later. I'll figure out the backdoor way to them. I think Jaden Daniels makes the most sense with our team, so I'm cool with that. And if you're going kind of naked quarterback, which it looks like we might be, you want the guy that has the rushing upside, and that's him. There's no other close to rushing upside. There's no other close to just like being that guy. And there goes Dak. That team is doing some interesting things. I'm a fan of what the 12 spot has done there.
There's a lot of interesting builds here.
Yeah, there are. So now I think we got to take a peek at, potentially Darnell Mooney and maybe even Kirk Cousins just make that game like a priority.
That's what I was thinking as well. Here we could do Tajay to build out a little bit more for the.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And at that point, then we're pretty good at running back for a while.
Yeah, we don't really have to get anything.
We might not even have to draft another running back. We could potentially have a 4 running back build at that point.
And he goes anyways. So any super preference here?
I mean, saw my boy Gus. I do like Chase Brown. I mean, is it a reach to go Trevor Lawrence here? We probably, I think the Evan Ingram team is after us right now, so I think there's a good chance we'll get Lawrence on the way back. So I like either Gus or I don't have a ton of Javonte. If you feel good about him, I like Gus, Chase, or Javonte.
I went Chase Brown. We were about to time out and take Will Levis at 114. So
no, we didn't want that.
Yeah,
order up that queue a little bit. That's always the scary stuff. The draft 101. I got stuck with like Tyron Tracy at like 140 in a draft recently because of this. So
yeah, I accidentally took JJ. So when the mini Schnauzer came out and it filled in literally 12 hours, 30,000 entries filled in 12 hours.
Sickos.
I was like triple tabling drafts to try and fill or like get as many entries as I could. And I took JJ McCarthy at 140 on accident. So yeah, like
that's always the worst feeling.
Yeah, I came back to it later. I was like, why do I feel like I'm so thin at running back on this team? Because like that's where I'm usually hammering a contingent upside running back. And I'm like, oh yeah, because I looked and saw I had JJ McCarthy at 140. I was like, oh god,
that'll
sucks.
do it. That'll do it for sure.
So back here where we could potentially have Lawrence make it back to us, and it would be a skinny stack with Kirk, but I don't think that's a terrible idea.
Not a terrible idea. I don't know if it's a necessary one now that we have Daniels either. That gives you the flexibility to only go 2 quarterbacks, but I like Levis late.
Yeah, we're fully building out this Titan stack. So
yeah, I'd be okay though. I don't have a ton of Lawrence, and I have a lot more Levis, so I'd be okay to attack it from that angle. I'd love to see who else is falling though, because I know we just talked about not needing any more running backs, but we have Cooper Kupp, like Blake Corum right now. Is he long gone at this point, or?
Let's go find out.
Yeah,
he's gone.
He's gone. Okay, I was gonna say that could be a sneak in there. Let's make sure we don't have those guys at the top of the queue. Let's figure out. Okay, so yeah, maybe it's Lawrence. Zeke on this roster doesn't make a ton of sense.
No.
So I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah. I don't mind grabbing Lawrence here.
Yeah, anything else here just kind of sucks. Like,
I don't think we need running back, and there's no really receivers in this range that I really want. Let's do Lawrence.
Yeah, I think that makes sense with the squad, and maybe we take Levis later. But now I think we're pretty good at
it's not a super big priority.
No. Now let's look at receivers though, because we are starting to get thin there. I know we're already punting tight end.
So I know neither of us super love Gabe Davis, but it is
John Dotson plays with Daniels.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple stacking partners there probably make the most sense. I do love Jalen Polk and Ricky Pearsall, but they don't really correlate with our team at all right now. But that is just like, I'll sacrifice correlation for the sake of like making sure I get at least 1 to 2 interesting rookie receivers, just because we know every single year I'm on Ross St. Brown. Every year I'm trying to think of who the other big ones. Rasheed Rice was last year. There's always a rookie receiver that goes off during stretch runs. Literally every single Best Ball Mania winning team, all 4 for 4, have at least one rookie receiver in their lineup that was typically drafted late. So if I'm going to forego correlation, it's almost always for a rookie wide receiver. I guess I would say, like, do we want to even like look at what tight ends are available? Probably not yet.
This is
But
not the range where I like to take tight end.
who's the top available? Like, so I don't know if you queued up like some of those rookie receivers.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
think Dawson and Gabe Davis make sense with our builds here.
Dotson and Davis are off the board. I've got Leggett and Pearsall queued up. And
What about
then
Polk?
Polk, yeah, I've got yeah, he's definitely an option here. Burton is another option. Pearsall goes,
Yeah,
so
I see Pearsall go.
it's looking like
Who's the
Polk,
top available tight ends though? If you want to just sneak that in for me.
it's Komet, and that's Musgrave.
Yeah, nah.
Hunter Henry.
We can wait at least a round. We're probably going. We are definitely going 3 tight ends. So at this point,
Yeah.
I think we're hoping for our AFC East, Hunter Henry.
And
yeah,
I like grabbing Sanat in a couple, and yeah, we'll see. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think a Henry, Sanat, Jonnu would be a great tight end room for this type of build.
Yeah, I agree. So Leggett goes. So really, the wide receiver here is Polk or Burton. I'm cool with either.
I like Polk.
Right.
I just think there's more of a chance he's like hitting us value early, whereas like we're waiting for Rashee Rice. And I do feel great about our receivers though too. So yeah, I like going Polk here. And then did you go Polk? Boom. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I went Polk.
You stand out in OTAs early on, ton of hype coming his way, which I like. I mean, we've kind of baked in a lot of flexibility. The only thing we haven't addressed is tight end. This is a clear how to punt tight end and draft on our tight end draft strategy show. But now we have that flexibility. Like if somebody falls, we can go them. But if not, we start hammering our tight ends. So what pick number are we up at next? Like 160?
Yeah, we'll be up at 151.
Okay.
So I think so on the way back around in round 14, we can grab Sanat. We'll have pick 162. He goes pick 168. So I don't mind reaching a little bit there and grabbing him.
Yeah. What I'm thinking through is like, does it make sense to reach on Henry and then Sanat? I also think Sanat is falling. I got him last January stack I did at like 175. So I think we could
go Henry too.
Yeah, I think we go Henry at 60s and then hope that Sanat falls. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. We go Ertz last round type of situation.
The rushing thing with Daniels, like you don't need to like force the stats.
No, not at all. No. Yeah, so I think let's look at this is the range I typically snag a rookie running back. I see Kendre Miller. I know he's not a rookie, but like that's the type of guy I'm looking at in this range. He's gone. Mooney goes, who I really do like Mooney. That would have been a nice like kind of bring back with our week 17, but I don't know that I'd go him over Polk. I want that.
Marshawn Lloyd might be there. It's a couple picks, but
Jalen Wright, is he potentially there?
Jalen Wright will be there. Has a chance to be there.
Who else is there for running back?
It's Jalen Wright. Marshawn Lloyd is there right now, and then it's like Algier, Davis, Antonio Gibson type of deal.
I was going to say Algier, but we have Bijan, so we don't want to bank on that. Yeah. If you want to pull in the queue and we can check that real quick together. Yep. And I'm thinking I do like Lloyd or Wright. That's kind of my preference here if one of them falls to us. But if you pull in the other positions real quick, let me just see what else is kind of out there. Yeah, I don't think we need Kirk Cousins, even though we have Bijan in that game. We're pretty set there. If he made his way back next round, we could think about it. But
I like
Lloyd or Wright.
I like Lloyd.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Lloyd. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Those are my second and third highest owned running backs, Lloyd and Wright. I think it's just a great range.
We're probably done at running back here.
Yeah.
And then we'll just hammer. I'm fine with either Sanat or Hunter Henry, whoever's really there in the next round. I think either of those are fine picks. I
would like Henry, and I would love if like Sanat then came back on the next one. But I would
obviously, yeah.
That's where I would kind of think. So yeah, so we have right now what 2, 5, 6, 0. Is that where we're at right now? 2, 5, 6, 0?
Yeah. 2, 5, 6, 0 is where we are.
So I think we're looking at definitely 3 tight ends. And how many picks do we have left? Like 5 total, or
our last pick was our 13th rounder. So 5.
So yeah, 3 out of those are going to be tight ends. So then we have 2 to play around with. Most likely, I'd say probably 2 receivers, but there is a chance we go 3-5-7-3. Like that, we have good enough firepower at receiver. I'd say that
Yeah,
we can just see what's playing out.
I would like to squeeze in one pass catcher for Jaden Daniels, and I think we can pretty easily do that with either McCaffrey or Sanat.
Yes. Yep. I'd agree. Maybe both. And maybe both.
Yeah. Yeah. If Sanat falls, I think, I don't mind doing Hunter Henry ahead of Sanat here if he's there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense because I feel better about him as my tight end 1. I think it could be a good, solid, like finish the year tight end 11 to 13. Some solid games, mostly a high floor guy. And then Sanat's more so like everyone keeps talking about maybe this year's Laporta. I like him. I think he's got exciting upside, a good athletic freak with that type of draft capital that makes you say, okay. But it's certainly a flimsier bet because of friggin' Zach Ertz dominating it. All righty. So yeah,
I'm gonna go Henry here.
Love it. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think this is how you punt the position. And I think we reserve a spot for Jonnu Smith and around like 180s or so. Maybe reach a spots on him.
Conklin will be there for us eventually at some point. Jonnu.
I think an ideal tight end room is Henry, Sanat, and then one of Jonnu or Conklin. I think that would be a great tight end room.
And also, I don't think it's crazy to do 3 quarterbacks and throw on Chig and Levis, with Chig being our 3rd tight end and Levis being a 3rd quarterback.
Not crazy at all. No, we already have the Calvin Ridley. Like I think that could be a great scenario, honestly. I think that is great. I think now that we have Polk and Hunter Henry, we could look at Drake May late as well. What Leone's recent pod on Establish the Run, really interesting data was like stacking is pretty much table stakes, as we all know. But one of the leverage spots was that one of the highest like success rates in the finals and advancing the finals was 3 stacked QBs, whereas half the field did 2 stacked QBs, only about 15 to 20%. I forget the exact number. Did 3 total stacked QBs. And this is a build where it's like, okay, we've already stacked up Lawrence. We ideally will be stacking up Jaden Daniels shortly. And then I think baking in that Will Levis late or Drake May late. And boom, we now have a 3-5-7-3 with a unique roster that was positive leverage all last year. I think that makes a ton of sense. So I really like that for sure. Let's pull into quick questions. We kind of have our game plan here. So I think we can pull in some more. So Krana asking, if I don't get any tight end 1 in early round 3 or 4, we'll try, which again, don't force it. Like if I'd say round 3, no, like there's too many good receivers there in that range, or like a falling Kyron Williams, Devon Achane type of thing. But I think round 4, if Kelsey's there, great. If not, round 5, Andrews. I mean, Laporta is going round 4 no matter what, round 3 usually. But yeah, Andrews, McBride, those are good guys. Round 5, 6 with Ingram or Kincaid, I think Kincaid is certainly the option over Ingram in my eyes. We know what Ingram is. I don't think we know yet what Kincaid could be. And some people might prefer that floor, but I mean, Kirk Cousins going this late, that could have been our 3rd quarterback stack. Like I didn't even think about him where we took Hunter Henry, which you kind of have to put the blinders on. We needed a tight end, like more.
We desperately needed a tight end, and we'll be up here in 1 pick, and I'm fine grabbing Sanat here. It would be 7 picks past ADP, so
I would love it.
Yeah, I'm cool to grab that and get a stacking partner. Luke McCaffrey went several picks ahead of ADP, so we're not going to grab him.
We got to get something, and I like that. And you made a great point. You don't have to get something when you have a Jaden Daniels because the rushing QB, but it is you still want something. You want a little correlation here, and I think that's a good one. I actually don't even mind. I don't even know where he ended up going, but I guess I get the argument that Austin Eckler is negatively correlated to Daniels just because a rushing quarterback, less likely to dump it off. But I feel like Eckler, like I get it. Everybody wants to write the dude off. And he's the type of guy that, like, you've seen the shirtless freaking pictures. Like, nobody eats, breathes, like, works out football harder than him. He's going to be more so in that timeshare that we've seen historically. He's honestly probably better for him. Elite touchdown scorer, elite pass catcher. Going at 130, like if this offense ends up being pretty explosive with Daniels, we know that Cliff Kingsbury's running backs have been toward the top of the league in touchdown share, whether it's Kenyon Drake. I get Brian Robinson will probably eat into that a lot, but it wouldn't shock me at all if Eckler put up like 12 touchdowns and we're all just like, how do we let a guy that was going in round 1 last year go pick 140, 130? I saw this draft. I think he went like 120s, and that's good too. But I think where we took Chase Brown, there was a little bit of me thinking like, it's early for Eckler. I thought he might make it back to us the next round, and he didn't. He's someone that's getting slept on, I think. I think Austin Eckler, as dusty and gross as it sounds, I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, again, round 1 last year, 130. Why not? I don't know. Let's see what he's got. The type of guy that I could see proving all the doubters wrong type of guy. So I don't know. Are you pure like dust? No Eckler for me, or what?
I lean towards I want to just jump off the ship before it sinks. And it's more that I've made the case to myself so strongly for Brian Robinson, and they go in the same range. Like, you see the quote that came out on the Hey K Adams show. He like said why he left Los Angeles. He said that
you wanted fewer touches, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they said they wanted him to be like a 300 carry guy a year, and that's not his game. And like that's my case for Brian Robinson. Like he got there without any receiving work. He's going to handle the bulk of the run. I can save that for another day, but yeah, I'll draft Eckler just because, like, yeah, there's a chance that we look back and we're like, holy shit, why didn't we draft a former number 1 pick with in the triple digits? So I'll draft him just because of that. But I much prefer Brian Robinson out of this backfield. And so we get our Titan stack hopes are dusted. We get Tyler Conklin 10 picks past ADP. Is that you just want to do that? Lock up
John, who's gone at this point?
John, who is not gone. We could wait on him.
I would go Conklin. I'm fine with that. We could bump our exposure to Conklin.
Right.
I do like Baker there too.
We could do Baker, then May.
You want to do Baker? Can you sneak it in?
Too late.
Too late. That's all good. That's all good. I do kind of. I like Baker there. Receivers probably getting pretty dusty at this point too.
I don't want to triple stack Drake May. I don't think, because if we're taking Baker, we should be taking May.
Look at this. Look at these names. I think we are taking Baker to take May. Which who knows at this point. But like I don't hate Zay Jones, and then you got a Cooper Kupp correlation there, which isn't the end of the world by any means. But underneath that, like an unstacked Jalen Tolbert, no thanks. Jalen McMillan may be a little interesting at rookie. The only receiver I would consider also this late now is the one that makes you cringe, but we are building out Patriots a DJ Chark run back because he goes for a 70-yard bomb against the Pats, and then suddenly May's off to the races.
Stop that.
I'm telling you, man, if the dude had a 30-point day with Bryce Young as his quarterback, I think he can do it with Justin Herbert too. Like DJ Chark, you're sleeping on.
I will do it in the sake of like having a roster that makes sense, but like just straight up DJ Chark. Is it Shark or Chark?
I think it's Chark.
I've heard people say Shark. Like, okay, but we're
that's what we're saying. Chark, CH Chark, Char. Like
yeah,
Char.
It doesn't really matter that much. So, do you want to do Baker and then just do the Drake May? Hope he gets back to us.
Yes, I do.
All right, that's fine with me.
And I think what it ends up doing too is like if he doesn't get back to us, we can just go Chark there. We don't need Drake May for this build.
Yeah,
we already have 2 really exciting quarterbacks in Daniels and Trevor Lawrence. I'm good with 2 QBs, but man, it would be nice now if we had a triple stack with Drake May and he goes bananas in the fantasy playoffs. Like,
I mean, like the only team that's going to take him is like whoever took DeMario Douglas, or just like some jackass.
We've been in this position though. I feel like I'm having bad deja vu. There was definitely a draft where we were like, no one's gonna. We have Polk and Baker. No one's gonna not. Somebody took Drake May naked, so you never know.
Yeah, you never really know what you're gonna get into with these things, but it is setting up that hopefully we'll be able to grab Drake May. It would be 10 picks past ADP, but I mean, like, that is the ADP of the 17th, 18th round, so you kind of throw it out the window at that point. And we've got a couple of 2 QB teams ahead of us, so but they're badges, so we'll see what they do. Hopefully draft with some
So
reason.
Moose is the tight end to draft, second best tight end value target. We already addressed that one with Thaddeus. Neither of us are diehards on Freiermuth this year, just because I think he should be going closer to the Hunter Henrys, and he's going a couple rounds earlier, and I'm not sure it's justified given it's Arthur Smith. Too many mouths to feed in Jacksonville, never Ingram. Too many mouths to feed, but Evan Ingram had the second most targets in like the league, not even among tight ends. Like,
literally tight end. Yeah. So there goes I believe naked Drake May. Yeah, like what do you mean too many mouths to feed? Like there was arguably better that not arguably like I would say like 80% chance Calvin Ridley's a better targeter than Brian Thomas Jr. and he still got 120 targets last year for Ingram. Like I don't know, like
it's the Doug Peterson offense. They always feed tight ends. Ingram's not even our team, so we're like hyping up a dude that we don't have right now. But the too many mouths argument I don't think applies to Ingram. We've seen volume on volume for him. I saw DJ Chark go. Now I'll toss it out there. It's a very rare build, but is Jonnu Smith still out there? Because this is the type of roster where 4 tight ends is viable.
Jonnu Smith is not there.
Oh, he's gone? Where the hell did he go?
So we've got
Rashee
Rice.
The queue. Yeah.
We've got Rashee Rice, and it like you can tack on a random ass Justin Fields here.
You could, yeah. I'm fine with that. We got Jalen Warren.
It's not ridiculous to say that, to tack on a and we have Warren. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I think that's the play.
I think it is. Yeah, I think this is a good roster for that. Where again, we're looking at. I saw purple. I was like, oh
yeah,
God.
I got nervous. I think Fields is the move here.
I think so. That's the play.
Yeah.
Because again, the same argument for Rashee Rice. Like, is there a guy that could leap 50 plus spots to where we're drafting him if Fields is named the starter, or at least even if he just looks good in camp? Like, because I heard the guy was like, do you even want Fields to be the starter? Because he's probably going to blow because it's Justin Fields and he's probably going to be benched and you're really drafting him for your playoff run. Either way, I love him in the last round because we have 2 good quarterbacks in front of him. If Daniels, the whole argument with him is he gets hurt or falters. At some point, I do think Fields is starting. And if that's during the playoffs and we've gotten carried there and suddenly you look and you see Justin Fields as your quarterback in the championship week, you're excited. He's going to be ranked as a top 8 guy no matter what at that point in the season. Elite rushing upside that late. I think it's great. I think it works with our team too. So that's why you talk about. I think it's Pat who always talks about like building a lot of outs. I think we did a really good job of that in this draft where we had a lot of solid stacking partners. And sure, we could sit here and get pissed that Drake May went to a naked team, which is still asinine. I mean, I don't understand it at all. But then it's like, okay, but we built the out.
Was it naked or was it the guy who took Douglas? Oh, no, it was just naked. This guy didn't take oh, no. Even worse. This was a 4 quarterback team.
CJ Stroud.
With Stroud, Rodgers, Light.
Good for you, buddy. Enjoy it. Enjoy your 4 quarterbacks with Bryce Young.
Someone's got to pay the rake.
Yeah. What are we doing there? I liked the start, too. Like Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, 4 wide receivers. I was like, damn, this guy kind of knows what he's doing. CJ Stroud now late to stack with Dell. I got a nice correlation. And, that one really felt like naked Aaron Rodgers. Oh, no, he has Corley there, too.
Oh, so man. Whatever. He's got the guy who's going to get 50 targets, maybe.
No, he's got Mike Williams, too. Okay, so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not the end of the whatever. The Drake May pick makes no sense, but honestly, whatever. Fields, I'm fine with. I think it works out well for us.
It ended up being okay.
Yeah, we'll review the team in a sec, but let's get some of our mailbag. And thanks again, Wolfpack. Over 230 of you here. If you please enjoy if you liked what you heard, please do consider that thumbs up button. Please make sure to check out rotostreetjournal.com where you can find all our written content. We'll talk about some of the pieces we've recently done in a second, but we want to answer your questions. So keep filling the mailbag. I love that you guys are kind of talking to each other. Some people calling each other out. Thaddeus is definitely capping, said GDLT. So I love it. Like a little rivalries going on in here. That's the type of stuff I love. So we see that a lot as the season gets going and you're the heart of a Thursday and people are bickering back and forth. It's the best. So let's get more of that in June. It's even better. So we left off though with Krana saying, only that worries me about Kelsey this year is I fear the Chiefs won't use him. So similar to that, yeah, like I get how they saved him for the playoffs last year. I understand that with the weapons they added around him. I think that's actually probably likely. I think it's getting baked into his price, and that's why he's falling to round 4. But I think you got to think about when they will use him. Red zone, third downs, like moving the chains. And even in like a less than 100% snap roll, like we're still talking he's going to play 75% of the routes at minimum. And maybe he does play 100%. Like this guy is 2 years away at most from retirement. What if he just says, Coach, I want to go ball out for my final season. Play me all. He even had a quote recently where he's like,
he already said that.
Yeah, didn't he say like, give me the load? Like he's like,
he
I
literally said that to the media.
Yeah. So like, we can't rule it out either. Like this is a fair worry, but the worry's already baked into the price. Worst case scenario.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I think it's already baked in the fact that it's absolutely. Like he's probably not going to be. I mean, you're getting him in the 4th round now. Yeah, it's definitely baked in the fact that he's not like going to be leaned upon as heavily as he was 2 years ago. So I still think it's worth it at cost. Like obviously, like it's not going to be the type of deal. I mean, like maybe on a weekly basis, like he obviously still provides the spike week like upside, but on a season long, it's not going to be like the type of deal like where we used to see from Kelce, where he was like literally like the top 10 tight end or top 10 wide receiver as a tight end. So it's probably not going to be that anymore, but I still think it very well could. Yeah. If the touchdowns swing the right way and he's just getting like a ton of targets, it definitely could. It's like obviously a lot less likely than it used to be, but you're still getting a guy who we think is an elite talent in an offense that is going to be significantly improved in terms of like just their projection is significantly higher from what it was from like what they were actually scoring last year in terms of their total points as a team. And it's probably not going to be like that, like 2019 Tyreek, Kareem Hunt, Kelce Chiefs, but like it's going to be a really high flying, high powered offense. And I mean, like you saw the quote, like we want to push the ball deep this year. Like, of course they want to push the ball deep. Like that's what they want to do with Patrick Mahomes, but like still like, it's not going to be the offense that we saw last year, and you're getting a 3-round discount. Like, I'm still buying it.
And I've long said too, like the reason we saw such a good Kelce in the playoffs was they saved him, and now he became a bit more involved. But also, he finally had somebody taking attention away. Like Kelce, as good as he is, he's not made to be the number one focal point, especially at this age. He's not like a crazy fast dude. He never has been. He just knows the soft spots, and those soft spots weren't really quite as soft because he didn't have any field stretchers around him. He didn't have anybody drawing number one corner attention, and that's not what Kelce's meant to do. Now with all these guys around him, does the number of targets go down? Probably a little bit, but I think he just becomes right back in that efficient mode, and we're all, again, banking that, like, we're drafting him around 4 because he's only going to play 80%, 70% of the snaps compared to past years. Probably, but again, maybe he does just say, Coach, it's my last year, feed me. He's already said that's what he wants to the media publicly. And I could see Andy Reid just saying, yeah, okay, let's do it. In worst case, was probably last year's numbers. He was still the tight end 2 last year. So, like, you're getting the number, probably a top 3 tight end no matter what in round 4. I have no worries about that. Could somebody be better than him at maybe a later round price tag? Probably. That's possible. But if anybody could just come back out, because as I said earlier in this show too, when we were talking about elite tight ends, like, it'd be different if we didn't see any glimpses of it from Kelce last year. Like by the end of the season, it was like, oh man, is this dude cooked? Like, I don't know. And then the playoffs come and we get 30-point weeks out of Kelce. And it's like, no, they just were saving the dude. Yeah. So it still is there. We saw it with our own eyes. It happened largely because they had other options. Andy Reid himself has said Kelce really benefited from Rashee Rice. That's kind of what you saw here down the stretch. And I think now that all those other weapons, it's just going to be, I would not be shocked at all if we get Kelce of like the guy that we were trying to draft in the first 3 rounds. And if nothing else, if you're superstitious, it's been the every other year trend with Kelce. He's either been, you had to have him to win, or you didn't want him at all. And we're on the, you had to have him to win year. And weirdly, that worked with like Deebo Samuel. He's an every other year guy too. He's literally like every other year he's been phenomenal. Last year was a phenomenal year. Maybe Deebo won't be. I don't know. There's no science behind that. There's no real actually analytics or anything. But they just, I don't know. Trends are trends. We'll see. And so apparently Thaddeus agrees with Shaw, and I think me and Mo clearly don't agree with the boys here. I think it's a fair point, but again, it'd be a fair point more if he was going in round 2 right now. More if he was going back in round 1. Right now, worst case scenario is like what you say, and I think that is still worth a 4th round price tag. If all your fears come true, I think he still pays off a 4th round price tag pretty well. I think the only real argument against it is if you don't have 3 receivers yet and you don't have that flexibility to go tight end, then it is tougher to go. Like if you went running back tonight, for example, had we gone Bijan, Nico, Kyron, you can't go tight end there. You have to have a 4th round receiver no matter what. I'd be intrigued to play that game of like what this roster would have looked like if we had gone Kyron, but our running backs ended up being really, really damn solid. So we'll do our lineup review in a second and play our kind of like second guess game. But I don't know. I think we should mow through some of these comments before we do that. Ferguson will get the works number 2. So Thaddeus, well, we don't agree on the Ingram and Kelsey points. I would agree that Hollywood Brown's the KC receiver you need. Who do you think is? There's such a wide range of opinions here on like, is there one receiver you need? If it is, who is it? Is there Hollywood's the most expensive guy? Would you agree that he's the one you need?
So I think it was Sam Sherman who brought up this point. It was a couple weeks ago at this point, but I think it's really fair. Like, no matter who it is, the KC receiver prices are more likely than not as a whole going to be inefficient. Like it's 3 guys, it's Kelsey and then 3 guys who are going in rounds like 6 and 7, or I guess you see Hollywood in the 5th round sometimes, but it's mostly just, or actually no, his ADP is in the 5th round.
He's pretty much locked into round 5. He went round 4 in ours.
Yeah, it's like 55. Yeah, I'm thinking back to it. But the other guys 6 and so like rounds 5 through 7, you see Hollywood and then Worthy and then Rashee Rice. And as a whole, like as a collective, like there is definitely going to be one guy who significantly emerges to beat out that ADP, perhaps even 2. I mean, like everyone likes to point out how Mahomes hasn't really supported a wide receiver, like actual wide receiver, not Kelsey, since the Tyreek Hill season, and has never really supported multiple wide receivers. But I like someone. Yeah,
I don't buy that. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. I mean, look what the hell he was throwing to. I don't.
Someone will emerge to beat out that ADP. So I'm looking to get everyone, and I'm tempted to grab Rice. And then we talk about it with running backs a lot. And just like grabbing a bridge receiver, like a veteran later in the draft, especially when we grab Rice as our 5th. You don't even need that bridge receiver.
You don't need the bridge.
Yeah. But if you can grab him as your 4th almost every single time, and you can just find some little bit of production earlier in the year, and it's massive upside later in the year down the stretch during the most important weeks. But I just like getting to all these guys. I think it's I think that it's going to be a great offense that's going to be significantly better than last year. And just because we don't really know who is going to be the number 1 between Worthy and Hollywood, and then the combined unknown of the suspension, it's just pushing down all these guys. And so I'm just looking to scoop up all of them. Like it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I love Rice at the cost, but I want a bunch of these guys because they're going to be one or a couple of them will pay off at cost.
Yeah, I think it's a great take. And I think a part of a kind of follow away from that take is like, I want more Mahomes than I think I'm currently getting. He is tougher to stack though. Like at most you're kind of getting one guy and then maybe Rice as well with him. It's really tough to get more than 2 weapons because they're all gone by then for good reason. I would say, I think Hollywood Brown, if I had a choice of any of them, agnostic of cost, of course, again, not including Kelsey, I would say, Hollywood Brown is probably the guy that I would most want. But you look at it, I mean, he was really bad last year with I know he's hurt, but he's also always been hurt. He's been really inefficient the last couple of years. He had that good run with Kyler when Hopkins was out, and it's like, damn, this guy can shoulder. And I kind of lean on that. Like, I see this guy have true number 1 potential. He was nasty for his first couple of years with Lamar, even in a low volume game. So I like Hollywood Brown, but it's been a couple of years since we've seen him actually be legit. Whereas I wouldn't shock me at all if Worthy can do everything Hollywood Brown does, but just better. He's certainly faster at this stage. He's great in the screen game that we saw in Texas that I think is going to make him so deadly in this offense. But ultimately, the thing that I lean on is like Rice is the cheapest, and we know exactly how he fits in as long as he's on the field. And so if this suspension ends up being 6 or fewer games, even at 6 games, I'm okay with the 7th round price tag. Like I really am. Obviously not ideal, but like, what's that?
especially at wide receiver 5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The way we built it, it was a no-brainer to me. As much as Ingram like fit what we were doing, it was a no-brainer to go him there. But like, if it's only 3 games, I would probably draft it. If it's 4 or less games, I would draft Rice over all of the receivers here. I would take him over Hollywood even without this. Like,
Oh yeah, 4 or less for sure.
Yes.
I'm thinking most people seem to think it's going to be like around 4 to 6. So
yeah,
we'll see.
That's fine.
Yeah, and I think we can eat that easily as our 5th wide receiver.
Absolutely. So I mean, really, realistically, right now, I think Rice is the guy I actually really like. Certainly at cost, but we know exactly what we're getting, if not better, next year, ideally. Yeah, sure, there's more mouths, but we know exactly how Rice fits in with Mahomes. So I love Rice here. But yeah, at this stage of the draft, if I'm taking one, it'd be Hollywood. But yeah, he's the most expensive guy too. So I've ended up with the least of Hollywood of all the guys, just because Worthy makes it to round 6, and I love that. I think I sent you a team the other day where I got I did actually pull off. I got Kelsey probably 42-ish, and then I got Mahomes. He fell to 51-ish, and then Worthy came back in round 6, and I was like, damn, this one feels good. This is a don't drop the baby moment type of situation where you've gotten some gifts on fallers here. Don't mess it up. And I think that team ended up being one of my favorites so far. Rice went the pick before me. I almost had the 4 weapons, and this is an offense you can take all 4.
Just get over to DraftKings. Just get over to DraftKings and you can get Worthy at 92.
It's great. Yeah, exactly. That you convinced me of that moment. And then I'll tweet out the team I already texted you on Saturday, where it was I got Tank Dell at 48, DK Metcalf 47, and I had CMC. It was nuts. I think I had CMC, Ayuk, Nico Collins, and DK and Tank Dell. I mean, come on. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you folks. That's crazy. DraftKings, as much as I love Underdog, it's way more fun of a platform, but there is just some lunacy going on DraftKings. Ben Sinnott could be a sneaky good tight end. I hope so. We would definitely love that for our Jayden Daniels stock here and our stack that we built out. I think so too. I do just worry though about I think Ertz is going to be, as he always has been these last few years, just more annoying than people expect. Maybe that's just the boomer in me that just has been traumatized by so much Zach Ertz over year after year. I just it wouldn't surprise me if either there's some talk of Sinnott running out of the fullback spot, and that's fine if it's Taysom Hill, that we know is a move around guy. I don't think it works for Ben Sinnott. He's not taking handoffs. So if he's playing fullback, that's ugly. That's not what I want.
People talk about the fullback stuff, because he won the low man award for the best fullback in the nation. But I can't remember. It was the Fantasy Points podcast. I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was a minuscule amount of his snaps came at fullback last year. So that's not a narrative,
right?
Yeah, it's not a narrative that I'm buying into at all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. So yeah, we talked. Coleman's a rookie receiver who's only stretching the field. I don't know about that. I actually kind of question his ability to really stretch the field. I picture him more as that big red zone body that could win on the fades and the back shoulder situation. He could stretch the field, but it wasn't his 40 4.7 absurdly bad for a wide receiver. Speed was not his calling card. His game speed certainly faster, but I'm not looking at Coleman as the field stretcher there by any means.
The scary thing about Coleman is nothing was his calling card. He's he ran a 4.6, so not insane.
That's not a field stretcher in my opinion. But then his miles per hour speed it's kind of like the Bucky Irving, where it was he had a top 5 miles per hour, which I do value more. But I don't look at Coleman necessarily as a field stretcher. Maybe, if he ends up playing that role and is actually good at it, he's going to blow his ADP out of the water. But I do question his ability to separate because he didn't separate much in college. And I don't see that necessarily changing against NFL corners. Coleman's so polarizing, though. I actually do have a decent amount of him. I'll take him when he falls. I certainly try to get him in Allen stacks. Allen stacks are so hard, though. I think we did a fun one earlier this offseason when we took Allen towards the top of round 1, or round 3, rather, because then you can build out Coleman, Kincaid at reasonable prices. So you kind of reach on Allen, but it ultimately makes those stacks a whole lot more palatable. Curtis Samuel in that round. I kind of want to force a couple more of those in, but it's just so tricky when Achane is there, Neighbors is there, Waddle might be there. I don't love forcing it anymore, but I thought that was a fun team. Do you remember that one we drafted, like Allen early for the sake of trying out a stack like that? It ended up, but that was also, I think we were getting Coleman at like 88. That was one of our early like sicko drafts.
It was a while ago, yeah.
That was a long time. So yeah, Conklin, our tight end 3. Again, this was like a tight end draft strategy show, and we both talked about like we don't really love punting tight end this year, and that ended up one just showing you how you have to go with the flow of the draft. But I thought for punting tight end, this was kind of a masterclass at it. Not to
it worked out
pat
really
ourselves on the back, but I mean, we stacked up Sinot with Daniels. Before that, we got a nice, like one of the safer late round punts, in my opinion, in Henry. And I love Conklin's touchdown upside. So like, if you're going to punt the position, I think this is a good way to do it. John being that other guy, that makes a lot of sense. So even though it's not our favorite strategy, it works when you do it the right way. And I think we might've done it one of the better ways here. So every tight end y'all pointed out, I'm drafting, I'm stacking. There you go. Like, so late round tight ends, Thaddeus, we're aligned like that. If you're punting, it's good. Bulldog, good discussion, guys. Thank you, brother. Great to see you as always. Bulldog, not about tight ends, but would you guys consider keeping Achane at 8th? Love keeper questions. Brees at 3rd, 12-team PPR, 1 keeper. Oh man, this is a tough one.
Like, I saw this one earlier.
Yeah,
this is like a legitimate case either way.
You really could.
I'm going Brees just because like you can paint the picture of Achane failing a lot clearer than you can for Brees. I mean, Brees failing is basically just like him getting hurt, but like the timeshare, the dip in efficiency is there for Achane. And in redraft, I think the difference between a 1st and 3rd round pick, and Achane will probably go in like, what do you think? Like the 4th round of redraft? Like
probably.
Like the difference between 4th and 8th versus 1st and 3rd. I think the difference between 1st and 3rd is a lot more significant. So, and just like, I think Achane and Brees have similar upside, but the floor is a lot higher with Brees. So, and I think the value between that you would be getting on Brees is also bigger. So I'm going Brees, although Achane in the 8th is so much fun, but I'm still going Brees.
I think I love the case you laid out. I think it's exactly how I approach it, where it's like, all right, probably the 5th or 6th overall player in redraft is Brees, and you get him in round 3, and it's, unless he gets hurt, it's how does that fail? Probably doesn't. Yeah. So I really do like that case. I think it's probably where I would go as well. But if you have time to wait this one out, Bulldog, like I do think it's worth just seeing like the reports today on Achane. I'm trying to pull it up right now on Twitter, but it was something about how like they're drafting up new ways to use him in the hold on. I got to find the tweet here. He was trending earlier. It must have been on damn, where the hell did he go? I'll find it. 2 specific goals Achane had this offseason. Here it is with 32 beat writers, a great account. Achane had this offseason 2 goals. Get stronger to better withstand the hits taken in the NFL and improve his route running to get the ball more in the passing game. McDaniel's now looking to get new ways into the electric Achane's hands as the running back now has a full year in the offense. And we've seen a couple quotes already from McDaniel's talking about how year 2 we can get more involved. And the headline of the article, Achane showing no signs of slowing down and could get more involved in new ways. So like, if we keep seeing stuff like that, the case with Achane, like why I love him so much in best ball, it's like very few running backs can get you 30. Never mind, he had a 50-point day, right? So like week 17, the guy you need to have, Achane is on the very low, like 5 to 6 running backs that have like, if you didn't have this guy, you didn't win all the money. Achane's one of those guys. There's no doubt about it. But the case why it's better in best ball is it was a little bit up and down. The injuries were there. You know, you could only get 11 games at Achane in best ball and still end up being okay as long as those big games come in the end of the season and you made it there. That being said, if he's getting bigger, stronger, wants to withstand more hits, now he's more involved as a pass catcher. We get to training camp and like suddenly it's like every rep of the ones went to Achane, and preseason week 1, all the first snaps go to Achane. He rips off a 60-yard touchdown. Like Oh, okay. We'll get some more data points that are like, okay, 8th round Achane is not going to be inconsistent. It's not going to be a 3-way monster committee. If we talk about Achane getting 50% of the work, that's it. Only 50% of work, which is not really that high of a bar. He only needed last year 10 touches a game to average 30 points. I don't know. I don't know when you have to make this decision. If I had to decide today, yeah, I'd probably go with the safety of Brees. That's not going to fail. It's going to prove to be great value. Whereas Achane, your whole points were great. Like there is far more chances he fails, and so that but that 5-round difference where Achane and it is in that tier of like could match Brees Hall's legendary upside, and goddamn, if he is the complete clear lead back and the best run scheme, and in my opinion, in the NFL right now, in terms of maximizing speed and space, and he's bigger, and now he's not going to get hurt as much. Like, good Lord, he might break fantasy. Like there's a very real case for either of these guys finishing 2024 as the number one running back, the number one player in fantasy potentially. And so if Achane's case is getting stronger and stronger by the end of camp, and now you can take that at 8th, man, it's so hard to let that go. I don't know. I think I'm going Achane at 8th. Like even today, I think I would take Achane at 8th. Like I don't know. It's too sexy. My brother has him as a 16th round keeper. And then he has CJ Stroud as a 15th round keeper in a 2 QB league. And I'm like, if you don't win your title this year, you don't ever deserve to win a fantasy title.
What league was he going? Achane going in the 16th round in?
Yeah, I mean, well, you think about home leagues last year. He was often on waiver wires. Like, it wasn't best ball. He was not getting drafted. But my brother, he's smart about getting the rookies before they blow up, and I've always kind of preached that with him. And he was like, Achane in round 6. He was like, yes, go get him, because like, what if he does emerge? And emerge, he clearly did. It's so much spookier though, because you saw all the games he missed. You see the size, but like it's I don't know if Achane could be that number one player in fantasy next year if he comes out week 1 and gets 60% of the snaps, and I'm making my like rest of season big board for week 2. He's probably number 1, maybe number 2 behind McCaffrey at that point. So
yeah. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a situation where I'm swayed off of Brees in the 3rd round, regardless of the rhetoric that comes out. I don't.
Oh man,
we'll have to have Bulldog come back and bring this up when I'd imagine this won't be happening for a little while. So have Bulldog come back.
You tell me you would not be swayed if I know, again, it's training camp, it's drum beats. I know we don't want to overreact, but if you got news that Achane has taken the vast majority of work, he's the first up in goal line drills too. And
that is not going to happen.
And in why not? For a while last year, he was scoring touchdowns over Mostert. He was in there for the 5-yard line, and they were doing passes to him. He had plenty of goal line work last year until he got hurt. No, that's a big preface, till he got hurt. But like, I don't know. If the first, so you get those reports, and then preseason week 1 comes, and he pounds in like a 5-yard run from the goal line. You're telling me you wouldn't take Achane over Brees with this price difference? You would. You'd have to. I wouldn't let you not.
Yeah. I don't know. I see a very difficult situation for my opinion to be swayed.
Yes. All right. Fair enough.
Like obviously, like once you see games, that's a different story. But
yeah. All right. We'll see. Well, this will be one to revisit, Bulldog, as long as we can. Let us know when you have to make that decision by. But so Thaddeus kind of coming back with the Ingram targets. Kirk was hurt, and I agree with that. Like it was that certainly played a role in it. There's no doubt about it. But even the year before, like I'm going to kind of pull up real quick Ingram's targets, because the year that like Kirk blew up for them.
Kirk was hurt in week 13 or 14. Like it was.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It was. Like,
that's when he did have his best games, no doubt about it either. But since joining the Jags, he had 109, 74, and 98 targets, and then 143. 143 freaking targets last year. 114 catches. This is the guy that scored 6 touchdowns as a rookie too. Like it's not like he can't score touchdowns. So I mean, again, we don't have Ingram on our team, so I'm not sitting here like trying to go to like hammer him right now. But like, he's probably one of the safest bets to see 100 targets at tight end this year, no matter what. Like,
yeah,
he'd be one of the first guys I'd put my money on.
I agree, and I mean, we don't have to talk about Evan Ingram more. We kind of talked about him a lot earlier, but I think that he will definitely be a high volume guy.
Absolutely. And Charlie saying great stuff as always, buying all the Andrew stock while I can. That wraps up the mailbag. We're going to do our team review though. So if anybody tosses any last questions our way or any last comments, by all means, we'll answer them before we sign off here. One last plea with 250 of you here. That thumbs up button really does help us out. Thank you so much to have so many of you here watching with us and interacting and commenting. Again, now we're getting closer though. I keep saying so early in the offseason. Now we're getting there though. Football is, I think Scott Hansen tweeted out the other day, was it like 12 Sundays away or something like
12
that?
12 Sundays away.
Yeah, we're not far, baby. We're not far. So
here we go. Two-thirds of the NFL season.
Yeah.
2/3 of the NFL season until we reach the NFL season.
Hell yeah. Let's go. There we go. I love it. All righty. So let's just talk. So Bijan at 7, I'm cool with. I think Bijan, Breece, McCaffrey, all within the top 8 makes sense. Those are the only running backs in the top 8 I'd consider. I'm cool with Bijan over Breece. I know we've had that debate a little bit. Like, did it even cross your mind to be like, nah, I want Bijan. We're in.
No, yeah. I need to get more Bijan. I feel like just for whatever reason, like drafts where I'm pulling 7, like someone's slipping, and I'm also just like not pulling 7 enough. Like I need to get more Bijan. So
yeah, I'm in. I like it. I think 4 receivers from there makes total sense when you go running back early. It's like CMC at the top, but he went Saquon. He did not take his. I mean, look at that. That's interesting. How that one panned out.
I was gonna say there was some interesting builds in this draft, especially from the 1 and the 2 slot.
Yeah, I'm stunned at how far Jalen Hurts fell there. I mean, damn,
he slides a lot, to be honest. I mean, his ADP is squarely in the 4th round now. It's like 38, so that's not really a huge slide. If he doesn't make it, if the AJ Brown drafter doesn't take him in the late 3rd or early 4th, like it's not that uncommon to see that slide.
Yeah, but I guess Devonta Smith went so early.
Yeah,
in this one in the 3rd, because I was gonna say there's no way the Devonta Smith drafter would also let him buy.
Yeah, no.
And they didn't. He didn't have the chance at him, but man, that's that late for Jalen Hurts. Because he's another one you can roll out naked. Like you don't need to stack him. It of course always helps to stack your weapons, but man, that late in the had we had a receiver here, which would probably have been AJ Brown, come to think of it, like it would have been tough to pass up on a 4th round Hurts.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to get some more Kirk there than I have. I haven't set up nearly as many Jag stacks as I probably would like to.
I think I have 28% Kirk. Like something heinous. But the only pick I would have maybe done something different was to lock up that tight end and grabbing Kyle Pitts to go along with Bijan instead of Ridley. That's the only thing different I would have done in the first 5 rounds. But other than that, I think like everything was fine through the early rounds. The 2 pivots that I would have made would both be around tight end. Pitts ahead of Ridley and Ingram ahead of Rice, but I'm still content and think the way we ended up working it out was fine.
Yeah, but then you look at the idea of like, okay, so if we hadn't gone Ridley, would we have loved going Rice there as our 4th receiver? Maybe, probably would have still done it, but like, and we would have had a tight end, so it wouldn't have even been a real debate there. But I like him so much more as my 5th. Like, I think it makes
100%.
Because now, no matter what the suspension is, unless it's literally like 2/3 of the season, and even then, if we're getting him back when it matters most, like, no, I wouldn't take him in the round 7. But as a 5th receiver, like, we've kind of buoyed ourselves out there, and we have that correlation with Kirk and Ridley for the next, the week 17. I just don't like Pitts, and you know that. So maybe in your own draft, you probably would have gone Pitts, but I can't stomach him there. That's not for me.
You can't stomach it. Like, I mean, like, I know you were way out last year, but like, it's the same price, and you know what's been holding him back.
Of course. If he was there when we took Kenneth Walker, I would have said Pitts no matter what there.
Sure.
I'm not reaching on him though ever. Like I'm not going to go 7 picks above ADP to get.
That's not 7 picks above ADP anymore. That's like 3, isn't it?
Is it? I thought he was like 62 or so. I don't even know. I don't ever look at him. I think Kyle Pitts sucks. Like,
no, he goes early around 6, so it would have been like 6-7 picks ahead of ADP.
It is obviously like quarterback play was by far the number one factor we're worried about, and now that should be straightened out. but we can't act like there's a non-zero chance that Pitts just isn't as good as everybody assumes he is because he had that like athletic measurables coming in. And he had a great rookie year despite bad quarterback play. All those signs do point to the fact that, like, yeah, he should be better, and yeah, he was hurt last year. I get it. I get why he's attractive. I can't click his name very often, and it'll be the one time I don't draft him, and it'll burn me. And it's the one year I should be drafting him, and it's clear why I should be. Actually, I didn't draft any Pitts last year. I was out.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would be shocked how much you had.
No, I had no Pitts last year. I was in year 2 after 1,000 yards. I was round 3 Kyle Pitts, and I was like, yeah, let's go. Next Travis Kelce, baby.
You like, he's like 22 years old, right? Like the stat that's been floating around
I love
is
that
like,
one.
At this point in Kyle Pitts' career, it's still like 6 months until Travis Kelce catches his first NFL pass.
Yep. I love that stat. I think it was Thorne when he tweeted out. It's great. I get it. I get it all. I should be able to look past it, and I don't know why I can't, but I can't.
you gotta mix it in. You gotta mix them in.
I'll try.
Do it at the back of the 5th on London teams or the early 6th on London teams.
I've done it on that. I have, and I do it on DraftKings more often too.
The ADP works out fine to do it late 5th or early 6th with London teams.
I do. I have done that a couple times, but the thing is, I don't get a lot of London. I don't know. I don't love these Falcons prices. I get the Michael, the new coordinator coming in, and I think it's great for Bijan. I think it will be good it's certainly good for London and for Pitts. There's no way you could call it a bad thing to have a legitimate play call and a legitimate QB. It's obviously going to be better for them. But, like, I don't know. Do you really want London that much clearly ahead of Adams? I'll intermingle them, but, like, I don't know. Marvin Harrison, like, London goes before him, and Marvin Harrison's about to see 170 targets from Kyler Murray. Like,
I mean, I'm drafting enough teams that I'm not getting too out of line with the first 2 round ADPs other than Taylor and Barkley, who I'm really not taking.
Yeah. And there's the whole point of like that, you want to get out of line to be different in round 2 when nobody likes round 2. But the counter I keep hearing to that, which I think is a great counter, is, well, how do we know Ayuk is not going at the bottom? Like, this guy went Ayuk, and yeah, it's a little bit different than what you typically expect, probably to balance out Gibbs and Ayuk there for some correlation. But, like, let's say Debo's traded, and now Ayuk's always going at probably going like 10 to 12 range every single time. Now you're not that unique anymore. So it's like that makes sense to do in August drafts when the ADP is pretty much settled. There's not, unless there's an injury or something crazy, that like then you can get different with those things. But to do that, he did it for correlation here. So I'm not calling out a great example. It makes sense to correlate there. But like I've seen a lot of people take like Waddle there. What if Tyreek tweaked something and now Waddle's the clear number 1? He's going to be going there anyways. So it's to try to get different makes more sense in August is all I'm kind of getting at there. But yeah, okay. So Walker round 6, I just want more exposure to him. I think it's a drop off from him to the Kamara, Montgomery. I think Walker, like I said when we were drafting, belongs with the Pacheco ETN tier, but he goes 2 rounds later. So I love that. I thought that worked out great, even though we already had solid investment at running back. And that's where you can get different is like, it's all wide receiver firepower. We got our wide receiver firepower. Now we have our running back firepower is fucking sexy. Like, Bijan Walker with like good guys behind him and Warren and Brown with upside. Like, let's go. I love the Rashee Rice. I don't know. I think Jaden Daniels, that's an interesting one to me. Is the Daniels one. So we had the option to get Love and Dak. You had all 3 of those guys there. I said, you pick. You went Daniels. What was the thought process? Because I could make the case for all 3 of them.
I mean, I don't want an unstacked Love, and you're going to be scrambling to grab just anyone just because, well, you see in this draft, Dobbs goes even before Love, and then you like hopefully get Wicks in the 120s. Where did Wicks go here?
You would get him where if we had gone Love, we would have gone Wicks where we took Chase Brown.
Yeah.
You would have had to.
I don't know. I'm only doing Love teams where I'm grabbing Christian Watson. And
I wouldn't do that because you want some teams without Christian Watson and still get Love because Christian Watson's going to fail you. And so, like maybe not, but
I'll do it on teams with Reed. I just don't get Reed very often. I am very behind on Reed. Where did he go in this draft? I'm really behind on
He went
Reed.
after we had Ridley and Reed. We had the option for either of them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Reed went to the Jordan Love team there. Yeah, that's nice.
He went at 64. 64 is a better price for him. He usually goes up where Ridley's going. So, I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time making the case for the late like scrambling stack on Love. And then Dak, we didn't have Ferguson or CD. Like I don't know. I don't really want to do a Cooks Tolbert stack.
I don't mind Cooks, Zeke, Tolbert. It's not pretty by any means, but it's better. I think it's okay. I think Cooks is going to have more volume than people realize. I would say this is I've had a few teams. If you didn't want to go, I like that we went Daniels, by the way, too. I'm only just doing this for like the sake of talking about it. But I think Daniels with John made sense. Like with week 17, the if you're going to have one of them be naked, make it the Russian guy. It all makes sense to me. I like what we picked. I wouldn't change it. The only thing I would say is there's been a few times I'm trying to bump my Love exposure one. I think he often goes where I typically take Dak, and I love Dak, but Dak's my highest roster QB. So I'm trying to get a little more love there. And I've gotten a lot of love at like 100, where it's my now quarterback 2. Let's say I've already gotten Kyler Murray, but then Love makes it all the way back to me. And I have found it very easy, more so on DraftKings, but even on Underdog, to do Wicks, Lloyd, Musgrave. And like, yeah, would I prefer to have a Reed or Watson? Sure. But who says Wicks isn't the number one receiver there? He really could be. And Musgrave, if this injury plans out for Tucker Kraft, like that lingers, Musgrave could be a monster at tight end. That might be the late tight end that you need. And Marshawn Lloyd, we've talked about, like great dangerous threat in the passing game, Aaron Jones style compliment workload already. And then Josh Jacobs goes down and suddenly you got the feature back. Like, to me, that's far more appetizing than like the Cooks, Zeke, Tolbert. That one does not really intrigue me. I'm with you there, but I can make a case for that Love stack, and I've done that a lot. Like I've gotten Love at 100, and then ended up with Wicks on the way back, Lloyd a couple rounds later, and then Musgrave typically falls to the Love team, and I love that. Like I'm good, especially when it's my QB too as well. Like I've done that a couple times, and I really like how it panned out.
Yeah, and in this case, it's our QB1. Like I just prefer the ability to stack up Daniels later on, and like we've talked about, like you're scrambling for stacks at this point, and you don't have to scramble as hard for Daniels because of the rushing stuff. So there's like the cases for both are fair, and I should probably be doing it more often. But for me, it's usually Daniels in this spot.
Yeah, that's fair. That's all fair.
Get to the late rounds and kind of get through that, and then get out of here.
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, Chase Brown, you just had upside, uncorrelated piece really, but another one of those backfields. Like I want a Bengals back in nearly every draft I do. I want a Steelers back in nearly every draft I do. I like to get a Chargers back. We didn't get one here. It's not a hard fast rule. And then I want one of like Lloyd or Wright, but I typically leave a draft with like a Bengal, a Steeler, one of Lloyd or Wright, and oftentimes a Charger back too. It just keeps happening that way. I like the Brown pick a lot. We had Javonte there, who I have none of, and it worries me a little bit. Like, what if he does rebound big? But I don't know. It seems ugly to me. Eckler would have been too early for him, in my opinion. Your guy Brian Robinson was gone. So I like Chase Brown there. I think we got our Bengals.
Yeah, with Walker and Bijan already on the roster, you take swings at guys like Chase Brown.
Yes, absolutely. Lawrence, great to stack him out. Fine with me. Jalen Polk, love it. You get our rookie receiver built out like Patriots stack that gave us the flexibility for May if he fell. He didn't. Love the Lloyd pick, him versus Wright. Didn't matter to me which one we got. I love them both. So I thought that was phenomenal. I don't know. Again, it's a tight end strategy show. This ended up being a how to punt tight end in 2024 fantasy. I thought it worked out great. To go, I was trying to think of like we talked about the Shrek turd of like the green line, the Smurf turd, like the line of blue here. If you're punting tight end, you got Hunter Henry, Ben Sinnott, Tyler Conklin. Good with me. I think our tight end rotation is going to be okay. Do we have a spike week upside? Probably not. But what if you get the 2-touchdown Conklin day in week 17? All righty, let's go. Or Ben Sinnott does end up being Laporta. Okay, let's go. Hunter Henry, just a nice stable, rounds it out. So yeah, I think that's great. Where did Jonnu go? I see him there. Man, I do love Jonnu. Does like give me more of those spike week vibes, but
where did he go? I don't see him.
He's right there after.
Oh yeah, 189, right after us.
Yeah. Right after Conklin. So we didn't have a shot to do a 4-touch tight end build, which, I mean, if he was there where we took Baker, I would have considered. A lot of viable 4 tight end strategy articles out there. Established Run has a great one on it, and I'm sold on it. Love Baker and Fields, though. Baker well below ADP, kind of towards building a Drake May stack that didn't pan out. But hey, Fields correlates with some Steelers, some Chiefs, and kind of, again, you're drafting right now for the idea that you're going to get a massive ADP leap. And I think Rashee Rice is potentially one of those guys. I think Fields is potentially one of those guys. I don't know. Is there any other that, like, maybe Drake May, if he's named the starter, leaps a few rounds, but I think Fields would leap further than Drake May if he's named the starter.
Fields, let's be real. Fields is not getting named the starter unless there's a Russell Wilson injury, but the Fields play is more.
Sure. They said they're going to give him a fair chance to compete. If it's a fair chance to compete and it's against Russell Wilson, I don't know. Have you been impressed with anything Russell Wilson's done the last 2 years?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just like literally like I don't remember which outlet he writes for, but one of the more trusted Pittsburgh beat reporters like said exactly what I said. Like the only world where Fields wins this job is if Russell gets hurt. So I mean, like, yeah, maybe that's still in the world of possibilities, but I am operating under the assumption that Russell Wilson is the locked-in week 1 starter and will be allowed to punt this team away and go to Fields.
I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think it's likely. I do agree with you. I think it's more likely Russ is starting week 1. There's no doubt about that, but I would not put it on a only if Russell gets hurt situation. I think there is a world. Tomlin's the type of guy, like, if Fields is just that much better and outplaying him that much more, which we're talking about Justin Fields, who's probably not going to be doing that. It's Justin Fields. He's not that good at throwing the ball with accuracy, at least. So, yeah, probably not. But Tomlin is the guy that, like, I would buy if he says it's a competition and the team is like Fields is if there's vibes, like Tomlin's a vibes guy. If the vibes are high with Fields and he comes out in preseason and throws 3 we've seen it before. We've seen Fields have 3 touchdowns in a quarter in the preseason. If that happens this year, like, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if Fields is named the starter. And either way, where we got him, if he's not the starter, I think he's going to start at some point. And he's going to be a top 7 quarterback whenever he's starting. And that's great for a last round pick. And if it happens to be the fantasy playoffs and we're in there, we just lit ourselves a nice firework that not everyone's going to have. So I'm into it. I think this team's good, man. I think this is. I don't love punting tight end. I think we did it as well as we could, and I think we sacrificed what we sacrificed it for. The big question was like Rashee Rice or Ingram or Ridley or Pitts. Those are probably the big chances to go into tight end. But I think the stabs we took, just me being a huge Ridley guy. If you're not a big Ridley guy, some people might say, yeah, you should have done Pitts there. I am big into Ridley. Rashee Rice is no-brainer for me there as a wide receiver 5. I would not go back and change that. And you know my feelings on Pitts. So I think this is how you punt tight end. I think this is a great show on how to punt tight end. I don't know. Do you have any other last thoughts on the squad?
Yeah, I think we executed it well with the late tight end. Had some guys followed us in Conklin and got Henry a little bit past ADP. I think we set up a running back room well. Tremendous depth at receiver, and I think that's a great 3 tight end group to have with a lot of rushing upside. I think this is all around a fine roster. Would have loved to. If I was going to switch out one pick, it would have been the Pitts for go Pitts over Ridley, and then grab like Hopkins or a couple other guys over Ken Walker, and then figure out the running backs later. But it is what it is, and I think for what we ended up doing in the early rounds, I think we ended up fine at tight end. So this is like a really good roster, I think. Yeah,
I think so too. Yeah, if we had gone Pitts too, we wouldn't have needed 3 tight ends. So you take away one of these, you probably keep Sinnott for the stack, and you probably get rid of Hunter Henry, and you might be taking Vidal there or, something like that. I see that too. There's definitely a path where that would have been better, but I'm intrigued to see what Ken Walker does. Like I think Ken Walker Bijan's a dynamic backfield that it is not too much. I think the wide receiver firepower is real. You can't get boxed out, but once you have your guys, that's going to be one of the edges this year. Again, Leone, the ETR pod recently was really good where Leone talked a lot about get your firepower, but don't be afraid of the detours once you have it. Because that's like these running back detours. When you get the Ken Walker that ends up being a top 5 running back, it's like, damn, that was round 6. Like that, I like it. I'm very intrigued to see how this one does. So another good one, Mo. We've got some good ones in the books. Thank you guys so much. About 250 with you here. Great to see you on these Mondays that we're getting some steady traffic. We greatly appreciate it. If one last plea, thumbs up, whether you're on Twitter and you pop over real quick to hit that thumbs up button. I know that's really annoying, but hey, maybe you're willing to do it for us. If not, at minimum, go check out RotoStreetJournal.com to find my rankings, to find Mo's stuff. Any recent articles, Mo, that you want to pump?
I just did one on Addison that I think I talked about last week that's out. There's one on Brian Robinson that'll be coming out sooner or later. For now, that's about it.
Maybe we tag team that, and I make a case for Eckler or something, because that could be a fun, unless you have a really strong take on Robinson, you want to just highlight alone. That's fine with me too. But when we talked about Eckler today, I hadn't really made that case yet, and I was like, I don't know, maybe just maybe the workout warrior comes back strong, and at 130, we're just like, how was this round 1 guy going at 130? I don't know. It's probably unlikely, but it's 130, so it's
if you're into discounts, that is the discount of the year.
It could be crazy. I won't count out Eckler completely quite yet. So that'd be fun to do. Yeah, now that we did the tight end draft, I'm going to do a tight end write-up probably tomorrow. Actually, I have a half day, so I'm going to have a nice time to dive in. So I'm going to do a kind of look at the market. If you're going elite, who to go. If you're going late, what we talked about today, but just in written form. So if you like to read some, you prefer reading or just want a nice compliment to what you watched today, I should have that out tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest type of situation. So check that on out. Brian Martinez, good to see you pop it in late. Just saying he likes to go 2 late round tight ends. Give me Pitts and Bowers. I don't know if you've been drafting Brian, because Pitts is not going late. He's going around like 6 at the latest. Sometimes 5. You never see him get past mid 6. And Bowers, you're looking at like round 9, 10. So if that's where you're considering late, okay. This will probably be different though in regular redraft leagues. I think people on best ball are a lot more sickos for Pitts, and I think they're much more willing to take the rookie stab on Bowers. So I don't want to say for certainty these aren't going late, but you saw our draft. Bowers went near top 100 and Pitts went top 60. So those wouldn't be qualified when you say I always go 2 late round guys. I don't know that those guys. I don't know. I have not really looked at regular ADP. I don't think it even really matters this early though, because I don't think anybody's gonna really try in those drafts quite yet. We're in June. This is where people are trying because there's money on the line. Lots of money. $1 million, 500,000 online. If you haven't played yet, I always wait till the end because I don't want to bug you guys. But code RSJ, link in the description. You can sign up for Underdog, the best place to draft, in my opinion, for up to $250 of bonus cash. Again, with code RSJ or the link in the description. You enjoyed what you heard. You want to get your feet wet and you're not already on there. Use that code. It helps your boys out. We get a nice little kickback. And we really appreciate you signing up with our code. All righty. Until next Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, we will see you guys later. RotoStreetJournal.com, where you can find everything else in a world full of fantasy sheep guys. Be that wolf. Later.